Welcome to the regular board meeting of the Halton Catholic District School Board on Tuesday, December 20th, 2022. Trustees, in order to be recognized, please use the hand up feature in Teams. To be automatically placed in queue. Please remember to turn on your desk mics on when it's your turn to speak. And if you speak when you're not recognized, when you do not have the floor, your mics will be muted. I would now like to extend a very warm welcome to all our guests out here. We will have legal counsel present online too, and a warm welcome there too to our legal counsel.
Sorry, there's an echo on this side from another device.
Okay,
I'm not sure. Sorry.
Trustees, can you check your laptops if the speaker is on? Is there an echo?
Yeah. Yeah, I think it's sound on.
Let's take a minute and check our laptops. Is there an echo on this side? Do we still have an echo? Trustees, do we have an echo? It's good? Okay. Thank you, trustees. Our first order of business is the land acknowledgement, opening prayer, Our Father, and the national anthem. I now ask staff to please start us off with the land acknowledgements.
Halton, as we know it today,
is rich in the history and modern traditions.
Many First Nations and the Métis.
From the lands of the Anishinaabe
to the Attawandaron,
the Haudenosaunee,
and the Métis. These lands surrounding the Great Lake
are steeped in Indigenous history.
As we gather today
on these treaty lands,
our Catholic social teachings
call us in solidarity
with our Indigenous brothers and sisters.
to honor and respect.
For direction. Lands, waters, plants, animals, and ancestors that walked before us.
All these wonderful elements of creation exist.
Gifted to us by our Creator God. We acknowledge and thank
the Mississaugas of the Credit First Nation
for being stewards of this traditional territory.
Thank you. Trustee Bowie, could you please lead us in the opening prayer, the Our Father, and the national anthem?
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and through you, I'd ask everyone to please join me in making the sign of our faith. In the name of the Father, Son, the Holy Spirit. Amen. Lord, as we enter this last week of Advent, dedicated to love, help us to lead and live our lives through love in your name. Fill our hearts with your love, and as you revealed to us by an angel the coming of your Son as man, so lead us through his suffering and death to the glory of his resurrection, for he lives and reigns with you in the Holy Spirit, one God, forever, ever. Amen. We now ask everyone to please join me in saying our Father. Our Father, who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done, on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our trespasses, as we forgive those who trespass against us, and lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. Father, Son, Spirit. Thank you, and now please stand for the national anthem.
Thank you, Trustee Bowie. We now move on to the motions arising from in camera. There were two motions from the in-camera session that will require a vote in the public session. I will read the first motion. Resolved that the Halton Catholic District School Board approve the property matter that was adopted in camera. May I have a mover for this motion?
I'll move it.
Trustee O'Hearn Chinada moves. Looking for a
I can
seconder.
second it, Mr. Chair.
Trustee Agnew. There's no discussion. I shall now call the vote on this motion. Vice Chair Agnew,
In favor?
Trustee Murphy,
In favor.
Trustee Saunders. In favor. Trustee Kelly,
In favor.
Trustee Bowie,
In favor.
Trustee Chua,
In favor.
Trustee Kuzma,
In favor.
Trustee Carabella,
In favor.
Trustee Powell,
In favor.
Trustee Kennedy,
In favor.
and Trustee O'Hearn Chinada.
In favor.
We have 8 in favor, none opposed, no abstention. The motion carries. I shall now read the next motion. Resolved that the Halton Catholic District School Board approve the Human Resource Services matter that was adopted in camera. May I have a mover for this motion? Trustee Powell, is your light on there? Looking for a seconder,
I can
please.
second it, Mr. Chair.
Trustee Agnew. Again, there's no discussion. We shall take it to a vote. Trustee Murphy, how do you vote?
In favor.
Trustee Saunders? Favor. Trustee Kelly?
In favor.
Trustee Bowie?
In favor.
Trustee Chua?
In favor.
Trustee Kuzma?
In favor.
Trustee Carabella?
In favor.
Trustee Powell?
In favor.
Trustee Kennedy?
In favor.
Trustee O'Hearn Chinada?
In favor.
Vice Chair Agnew.
In favor.
So we have 8 in favor, no abstentions, and none opposed. The motion carries. Our next order of business is the approval of the agenda. Do we have any additions or deletions to the agenda, and do trustees want any of the items under the consent agenda to be moved? Seeing none, may I have a motion to approve the agenda?
Trustee Agnew?
Moved by Trustee Agnew. Looking for a seconder,
I'll
please.
second it.
Trustee Powell. I shall take it to a recorded vote. Trustee Saunders. In favor. Trustee Kelly.
In favor.
Trustee Bowie.
In favor.
Trustee Chua.
In favor.
Trustee Kuzma.
In favor.
Trustee Carabella.
In favor.
Trustee Powell.
In favor.
Trustee Kennedy.
In favor.
Trustee O'Hearn Chinada.
In favor.
Vice Chair Agnew.
In favor.
Trustee Murphy.
In favor.
We have 8 in favor, no abstentions, and none opposed. Motion carries. The agenda is approved. Moving on to our next order of business, which is declarations of conflict of interest. Are there any conflicts of interest to be declared tonight? Seeing none, we shall move on to our next order of business, which is presentations. Item 4.1, Senior Staff Update. Director Klein, please introduce the presentation. Director Klein.
Through you, Mr. Chair, I'm going to defer to Superintendent Kroll.
Good evening, trustees. It's my pleasure to introduce Ms. Doreen Bonsu. Doreen is currently a teacher at Bishop Redding Catholic Secondary School in Milton. She's been a teacher with the board since 2015 and is a graduate of Holy Trinity Secondary School. In addition to her excellent classroom teaching, Doreen has been involved in a number of curriculum writing projects, both at the school and board level. We asked Doreen here tonight to share the success of one of these recent projects. Often when we develop courses, it's done through a team or a department. In this case, it was done through hard work, passion, commitment, and really excited to sort of share this story with you. So let's please welcome Doreen Bonsu, who's going to speak to this work.
Thanks so much, Jeff, for that introduction. I'll use this opportunity to thank Jeff and the curriculum department for all their support. Also, Sita as well, thank you, and Amanda as well, and Carmen Kondo too. So to start off, just to give you some context in regards to how the creation of this course began, back in 2020, I personally felt that the senior courses that are available in Canadian and World Studies didn't quite do justice when it came to affirming Black voices specifically. I knew other boards offered a similar course to this course, and I was very adamant about bringing that here to HCDSB. Fast forward to this February 2022, this course had 17 students, and right now I'm teaching it for a second time, and there are 23 students that are currently enrolled. Now, when it came to the creation of this course, I am of Ghanaian descent, Ghana being the best country in the world, and a term that I used to kind of center the course is called Sankofa. So in Tree, which is our native language, Sankofa means to return, so to go back. So what does that mean? In order to know where you're at and where you want to go, you need to return back, right? So I start off the course with the wonderful continent of Africa. So some of my favorite lessons, as well as students' favorite lessons, include debunking myths about the continent of Africa. A lot of people think the continent is a country, right? Or they'll be like, the continent of Africa is just all poor people, or it's primitive, or in regards to people of African descent, some of them maybe don't know how to swim. Maybe that, like, those are all stereotypes, right? But by using critical thinking skills, research skills, students leave that class knowing that all those myths are untrue. Another thing that we do a lot of in this course are hands-on experiences. So for example, this year we went to go watch The Woman King as a class. We also went to the Oakville Museum where students participated and checked out the permanent Black museum exhibit that's there at Navy Street in Oakville. So all of these experiences are examples of experimental learning, which we know our students excel in. Next slide. Oh, my bad. Okay, so next slide. In regards to student awards, now we know a course like this does not run unless there's incredible students. We all wouldn't be here unless we're serving students. And I know I have the best students in the world. I know some of them are watching. This year, we've been able to collaborate with Alpha Education, which is a non-for-profit program. And this organization focuses on promoting the learning and critical understanding of history in World War II in Asia. Now, this group, knowing the nuances of my course, we were able to focus on, we were able to focus on the experiences of Black Canadians. So this past June, students worked on video projects that highlighted anti-Black racism within society. So some topics students looked at include colorism, lack of representation of teachers in the education system. They looked at anti-Black racism within music. And lastly, the winning group, Sephra, Jonathan, Talia, and Chanel, they looked at how racism has manifested itself in different ways. So the title of their winning project is The Mutating Monster, Racism, the Mutating Monster. And they won a grand total of $260, and they were pumped. Well-deserved. The really neat thing about that, working with Alpha Education, is the fact that back in September, we were invited to an exhibit where students were able to show their incredible work and share their learnings with other students across Catholic boards and public boards in Ontario. Next slide, please. And lastly, student feedback. Although this is just the second time this course is running, I've had overall positive feedback. Students feel, Black students and non-Black students feel affirmed. They feel like the classroom is a brave space where uncomfortable conversations can happen. Nonetheless, as a collective, we move forward. Another thing too that they appreciate is just how much learning they have when it comes to Black Canadian experiences. And one thing that they love is the fact that we incorporate art, right? And we know that through art, it allows students to express themselves creatively and demonstrate their learning, as well as provides them with a sense of self-confidence. And lastly, the one thing that they go away with is knowing that Black is beautiful. And they might enter the classroom hearing that term, but not necessarily understanding the joy, the brilliance, the creativity, the struggles, the pain, the celebration that's associated with that term. But when they leave, they understand what that phrase means. So I want to leave you all with the hopes that a course like this can be very much implemented in all schools across our board, and to also urge all of us to kind of think about how we can continue to implement Black narratives throughout all aspects of curriculum. Thank you.
Thank you, Superintendent Kroll and Ms. Bonsu for coming here and presenting to us. And I shall now open up the floor to trustees to ask questions. Trustees, do we have questions? I see Vice Chair Agnew, you have the floor.
Thank you so much for the presentation. And so you touched on it at the end. So the question I was going to have is, what are the plans to roll this out, to see further implementation, to have more students be able to access this particular curriculum? What's that look like?
Ms. Bonsu?
Yeah, I'll speak if that's okay. For me, particularly as an educator in this board, I think there's two things. I think the first one is continued funding. Like I've said, I started off this by thanking Jeff, thanking Sita, thanking Amanda for creating space and providing all those experiences for my students, right? Speakers cost money. In terms of the collaboration that we're working with Alpha Education, that's self-funding that's required as well. I also think when it comes to teaching this course, I do believe, sure, there are a lot of white teachers that are in this board, but I also believe that in order for it to be impactful and intentional, we need to look at amending our hiring practices and look at hiring more Black educators. We do have a lot of Black staff, but when it comes to educators, administrators, superintendents, we lack in terms of representation. So those are the two things I would suggest: increase funding and hiring Black teachers.
Thank you. Trustee Vice Chair Agnew. Yeah.
Another question I had, and I'm so happy to have seen the comments from your students in the slide, was I was curious about engagement. It seems like some students, obviously they were interested in taking it because they did. But, did you see the level of engagement sort of change from the beginning of the year to the end? And how did you feel that was with the students in the class?
Ms. Bonsu?
Thank you for your question. What's been really neat is I was really intentional in terms of planning. So making sure that I try to have a guest speaker at least once a month to try to keep them engaged. Making sure that all assessments kind of reach out to all types of learners and all students, so that students feel that they can best show their learning, because we all know that our students all learn in different ways. So giving them a sense of choice. So I do feel that engagement is even high right now during the Christmas season. Yeah.
Thank you. Moving down, speaker list, we have Trustee Saunders. Your hand up, you have the floor.
Yeah, I'm just wondering, as part of one of my previous roles, I was in the chair of the Employment Equity Committee for a government division, and we had a lot of dynamic presentations that we developed. And I'm wondering, is there an opportunity for them to contact you to talk about some of the things that they put together? And I think they'd be interested in making presentations to your group. Is there like a facility or a way that they could be in contact with you?
Ms. Bonsu, go ahead.
To be honest, I haven't heard of that, what you're talking about, but maybe we could talk about it later. Maybe I'd be open to it.
Trustee Saunders, do you have a follow-up question? No? Good. On the speakers list, next is Trustee Chua. Trustee Chua, you have the floor.
Through you, Mr. Chair, to Ms. Bonsu. First of all, I'd just like to say thank you for being such a passionate teacher. You are the teachers we need in our schools. Coming from a student, I thank you for being that teacher who teaches beyond the classroom, teaching our students what they really need to know. My question for you is, as student trustees, how can we promote this to students? Because this is such an impactful and interesting course. I know it's only running in Bishop Reading because you are the only one who can teach it, but how can we allow students to, enter your course and come out of it even brighter?
Ms. Bonsu, go ahead.
Thanks so much for the kind words. I appreciate it. This board has a lot of passionate teachers too. I'll give it that. In regards to promotion of the course, I'm really new to this. As a teacher nowadays, you have to be like Instagram, how to work social media. You got to be a TikTok influencer. So I do have some social media handles if you want to check out africanhistory.br and my personal or my teacher Twitter at Ms. Bonsu Tweets. Feel free to repost. I tend to share a lot of what we're doing in class as well. I'd love to have you come in as well and learn with the students if any of you are open to it. And that's all I could kind of think of right now, but.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Trustee Chua, you have a follow-up? Thank you. I see no other trustees' hands up. So Superintendent Kroll and Ms. Bonsu, thank you so much for the wonderful work that you do, especially in Milton. Thank you so much. We shall now move on to the next order of business, which is delegations. The item 5.1 declined delegations. One delegation was declined for this meeting as the script was not submitted on time as per policy I-06, delegation to the board, bylaw 12.4. Next item is item 5.2, parent community concerns. We have one delegation this evening, and I ask Ms. Selvin to make her way to the center of the table. I will let you know when to begin. Do you need any help in setting up, Ms. Swindon? Yeah. Can you keep that? We'll let you know when to begin. So when you settle down, let me know.
Thank you.
Are you settled down? Okay.
I am, yes.
Give me a minute and I'll get the timer started. So the delegation this evening is from Ms. Selvin. Welcome. You have 10 minutes for your presentation and you must stay to the script. That's part of tonight's board agenda package. If your delegation extends beyond 10 minutes, you will see me appear on the screen and I will ask you to stop. So I now ask staff to help me with keeping the time, and Parliamentarian Kapoor here is helping me keep the time. So let's stick to the script and your time starts now. Go ahead.
Thank you. Little race. Okay. Good evening, everyone. Trustees, thank you for having me here today. My name is Sausan Selwyn. I have two children attending elementary school in the Halton Catholic District School Board. My children have attended schools in the HCDSB for the past 9 years, and I've been involved with their schools as a volunteer and on parent council for most of those years. I'm a parent representative on one of the councils, and I'm the community representative on another council. This year is the first year in all my time with the HCDSB that I have encountered some concerns, however, and witnessed issues relating to school administration, school council matters, and financial irregularities, which could not be resolved at a school level. And so I'm here to talk to you today about my disappointing experience, unfortunately, over the past several months, attempting to understand and to navigate the HCDSB hierarchy, to escalate my concerns, and to ask for your help to resolve these issues going forward. I'm also here to tell you about similar experiences which other parents in our school community have shared with me as their community representative. I'm here to sound the alarm about a system or a lack of a system of accountability at a senior staff level at the HCDSB. I am here to call it out. Over the past months, emails from myself and other parents to our Director of Education and to superintendents of schools have resulted in 1, no responses at all after weeks and months, even after follow-ups. 2, very delayed responsive or non-substantive responses. 3, issues still remaining unresolved for several months with relationships in our school community continuing to deteriorate, affecting our children and our parents' school experience. 4, there's been pressure on parents to persuade or dissuade us from continuing to follow up on our concerns by email or to even bring this delegation here today. And 5, there's been evasiveness on the results and outcomes of investigations into the concerns that we've raised, with the superintendent of our school directing me back to bring my concerns back to the principal of one of the schools when some of the complaints related to the principal herself. In the relatively short lifespan of a school year, you'll appreciate that almost 3 months before steps start to be taken to address a concern is not reasonable and does not instill public confidence in the system. This lack of accountability and attempts to discourage parents from corresponding and escalating concerns cannot go on. It goes against the fundamental principles of the Ontario Education Act and parent engagement policies relating to transparency and accountability to ensure public confidence in our education system. This cannot go on. Months to receive a response to an email is not acceptable and cannot be condoned by a board of trustees who are tasked to ensure public confidence and parent engagement in our schools. This evening, I'm requesting the Board of Trustees to review their policies and to amend or implement new policies to require clear and specific timelines for acknowledgement and substantive replies to parents and guardians, communications by senior staff such as Director of Education and Superintendents of Schools. On this basis, I've undertaken a brief review of some of the relevant education legislation and policies in Ontario and at the HCDSB, which I want to review with the board, and I'd request that you consider these. So if I could take the next slide, please. Under the Education Act, it is clear that the board here is tasked with effectively using its resources that are entrusted to it in a manner that upholds public confidence. The effective use and management of human resources by the board is therefore imperative and required under the Education Act to ensure the school board actually upholds public confidence. Hence, the board must ensure that the Director of Education and other senior staff are responsive within a clear timeline to concerns raised by the parent community. It's been clear to me by the actions of director and superintendents at HCDSB that there is no such policy in place, and it is incumbent on the board to develop an appropriate policy to fulfill this element of the Education Act. Next slide, please. There is a parent it's okay. There is a parent engagement policy. Sorry, you went too far, I think. There is a parent engagement policy for Ontario schools, which states that it sets out the importance of engagement with the parent community in our education system. I'm going to read a quick part of it for you. Parents matter in education. They matter as vital partners who contribute much to the work of our educators, schools, and communities. They matter as parent leaders, parent mentors, and models of commitment to excellence in education. And they matter every day as they influence and support their children's academic achievement. An effective parent engagement policy must acknowledge the importance of parent voice by providing multiple ways for parents to express their perspectives on education, and my emphasis here, to receive responses from other educational partners. The role of the board in ensuring this transparency and accountability and communication is set out clearly within that policy that I'm referencing. Next slide, please. The board is required under board actions to establish and sustain a positive learning culture where parental input is meant to be encouraged, respected, and valued. I do not feel encouraged, respected, or valued. My emails are ignored, my concerns are not given the courtesy of a response, and I'm actively pressured to stop raising concerns and to not escalate them, even when there is financial and procedural irregularities. The board is also tasked to identify and address barriers for parents accessing. And it's clear to me from my experience, along with the many others in our community, that these barriers do exist at HCDSB. The lack of any urgency or response from the Director of Education or superintendents to parent concerns means that issues of the parent community are simply swept under the rug. If those parents do not have the time and resources to navigate this complex system, requiring them to jump through hoops, to submit scripts within certain timelines, to submit a request to delegate in a public forum, then apparently no attention is going to be paid to their concerns. 3, the board is also tasked under this policy to implement specific policies, programs, and action plans that reflect the principles of equity and inclusive education and take the parent voice into account. But here at HCDSB, I note that there is a policy that relates to timelines, but only in relation to communications from board trustees to parents and guardians. There's even a policy that relates to teaching staff and teaching staff have always responded to me in a timely manner. And many principals that I've worked with have been very efficient, knowledgeable, and responsive. However, the only policy that I've found at the HCDSB that relates to communications or complaints from parents to the Director of Education or to superintendents of schools relates only to very student-specific issues and not to matters of procedure or any other concerns at a school level. Furthermore, even in that policy, it doesn't set out any timeline requirements at all on superintendents or directors of educations to respond. Meanwhile, at the Toronto Catholic District School Board, for example, there is a specific policy relating to all school-related concerns, and in that policy, they set out a clear requirement on superintendents and directors to respond and address concerns within a timely manner. Next slide, please. Up there is an extract from the TCDSB guidelines for trustees, parents, staff, in addressing school-related concerns. The lack of any policy at HCDSB governing timelines of responses from the director and superintendent is what's resulted in a lack of respect for and accountability to the parent community. And it is not fostering parent confidence in the education system. Instead, it is alienating and not engaging the parent community as required under the parent engagement policy. This board's mission statement says, the Halton Catholic District School Board, in partnership with Home and Church, is dedicated to providing excellence in Catholic education by developing Christ-centered individuals and able to transform society. From my experience, the partnership between the board and the home needs some attention. We entrust to you our most precious gifts, our children, and to your care every day. We trust you to watch over our children by looking after their education system. So please, I'm asking you to do better. And I'm going to read, next slide, please. In conclusion.
Thank you. I think it's time up.
Yeah, it's just a Bible verse.
Okay.
Be shepherds of God's flock that is under your care, watching over them, not because you must, but because you are willing, as God wants you to be, not pursuing dishonest gain, but eager to serve, not lording it over those entrusted to you, but being examples to the flock. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Selvin.
Thank you.
Trustees will now have the opportunity to ask 2 questions for clarification purposes. You'll have a total of 3 minutes, which includes the responses. Okay, so trustees, if you have questions at this point in time, please put your hands up and you'll have the opportunity. So I see Trustee Saunders, you have your hand up. Trustee Saunders, you will address the chair and ask the question, please.
Okay, through you, Chair. I'm just wondering, was your trustee involved in any of these issues? Did you get any response from the trustee, or just what was your experience with their involvement in these issues?
Ms. Selvin, go ahead.
Thank you. When this issue first arose, it was before the current trustees were here. So yes, my past trustee was involved and helped to direct me through the first steps of the process, but then the trustees changed over.
Trustee Saunders, your next question. Thank you. Seeing none, don't see your hand up there. Okay, I'll give this one to you. Trustee Kennedy? Yes, yeah, always go through teams so that we have a proper control there. So Trustee Kennedy, I see your hand up.
Thank you.
There, so you have the floor. And you have 3 minutes to ask.
Through you, Mr. Chair?
Yes. Parliamentary Kapoor, the timing, yeah, go ahead. Yep.
In the report, you mentioned you've encountered concerns and witnessed issues relating to financial irregularities. What do you mean by that?
Ms. Selvin?
Thank you. Well, on a very small level, for example, I noticed some funds had been spent on, like from SGF.
The delegate as well as trustees, we cannot talk specifics about an occurrence in a particular school. This is a generic presentation, so you can talk on a high level. and explain that. We cannot talk of details. Okay, so once again, the timer will be reset, and Ms. Selman, go ahead.
Thank you. I read the policy that relates to what SGF could and could not be spent on. There's a list of about 10 items that funds cannot be spent on. For example, any kind of spending on staff, board staff, whether it's lunches or gifts or anything, the SGF cannot be used for that, where I've noticed that it had been, and there were plans to continue using it for something similar.
Thank you. Trustee Kennedy, do you have a follow? Okay, thank you.
Not at the moment.
Trustee Ohanchanara, you have the floor. Parliamentarian Kapoor, good. Okay, go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'd like to ask Ms. Selwyn, if it was possible, it's like the million-dollar question, so a timeline for a response. Just clarification on what the perception of a timeline should be.
Ms. Selwyn?
Thank you. I've noticed that there is a policy relating to trustees at the HCDSB, and the response timeline on trustees is to acknowledge receipt of an email within 2 days or so, and then to respond more substantively in a timely manner. The Toronto District School Board's policy also refers to providing a resolution or conclusion in a timely manner. So I'm not, each problem is going to be different, of course, but I think that initial acknowledgement piece can certainly be within 24, 48 hours at minimum. I wasn't even receiving that sometimes. And then actually concluding it as opposed to letting it carry on for months and months. In, as I said, the lifespan of a school year, 3 months is a long period of time for issues to not even begin to be
Trustee
resolved.
Ohanchanara, you have a follow-up? Okay, thank you for your question. So, Vice Chair Agnew, you have your hand up to the floor.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. Just to have any of the issues that you're referencing in your delegation, have you seen resolution in any way to any of the matters that you have been attempting to bring forward?
Ms. Selman?
Unfortunately, no. Is this very short answer. There have been a few attempts. I have even been told that, there was some financial meeting and that things were being investigated, but never has a resolution come back to me or any of the parents with a conclusive kind of, here's a substantive response to conclude your matter. Whether it's a response to say this is out of our purview or it's not fixable, we've only gotten to the stage where it's been accepted by the superintendent and the director that there are issues and that there are concerns. And everyone has acknowledged that there is a problem, but there hasn't been any actual resolution to that problem.
Thank you. Do you have a follow-up? Okay. Thank you. I see Trustee Saunders, you spoke once. You do not have a second opportunity. Trustee Kelly, Trustee Kirsten, you have the floor.
It's Trustee Kelly, but thank you. And through you, Chair. I did have a question about length of time. Do you think, when you say this year, do you include September 2022 up until now, or do you mean all of 2022?
Ms. Selman?
Sorry, I'm not clear. What do you mean? Do I include in what section?
Could you rephrase, Trustee Kelly?
Yes, the incidents that you were bringing up in terms of your delegation, has this been going on throughout the year, like maybe on and off, or is it just as of September?
Ms. Selman?
I first started corresponding with the director and superintendents about these issues this school year. So in fact, my first email to the director was October 6th.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ms.
No follow-ups.
Trustee Kelly? Okay, thank you. So I do not see any further hands up. So once again, thank you so much for your presentation. You may now take the seat in the gallery there.
Thanks very much.
As per our newly adopted procedural bylaw 12.8, delegations shall automatically be received as information unless a motion comes forward to refer the matter to a committee or request a staff report on the matter to be considered in a future meeting. Not hearing otherwise. I'm not hearing otherwise, Trustee. So no, I'm not hearing anything otherwise. So this delegation shall be received as information. We shall now move on to the consent agenda items. Following items have been Agreed upon the agenda approval to stay on the consent agendas. Items 6.1, 6.2, 6.3 to 6.11, 6.11. So trustees, there will be a single motion to approve the consent agenda items, and there will be no discussion. I will read the motion. Resolved that the Halton Catholic District School Board approve consent agenda 6.1 to 6.11, December 20th, 2022 as submitted. May I have a mover?
I'll move it.
Moved by trustee O'Hearn Chinara.
I can second it, Mr. Chair.
Seconded by trustee Agnew. There is no discussion here, so I shall call the vote. Trustee Kelly?
In favor.
Trustee Bowie?
In favor.
Trustee Chua?
In favor.
Trustee Kuzma?
In favor.
Trustee Carabella?
In favor.
Trustee Powell?
In favor.
Trustee Kennedy?
Excuse me.
In favor.
Trustee O'Hearn Chinara?
In favor?
Vice Chair Agnew?
In favor.
Trustee Murphy?
In favor.
Trustee Saunders?
In favor.
So we have 8 in favor, none opposed, and no abstention. The consent agenda items carry. We shall now move on to the next order of business is business arising from previous meeting. There's nothing there. Next order of business is action items. The first one, 9.1, reimagining our land acknowledgement by trustee O'Hearn Chinara and trustee Chua. This is a notice of motion that was presented at the November 1st, 2022, a regular board meeting. At the last board meeting, this action item was postponed to today's meeting. This motion was originally moved by trustee O'Hearn Chinara and seconded by trustee Kelly. I'm going to ask trustee O'Hearn Chinara to please read the motion again, and then we shall proceed. Trustee O'Hearn Chinara, you have the floor.
Absolutely, it'd be my pleasure. Whereas the Halton Catholic District School Board acknowledges the significant contributions of Indigenous communities and the importance of embedding First Nation, Métis, and Inuit history, culture, and perspectives. Whereas achieving Section 2.2 within the Halton Catholic District School Board multi-year strategic plan states to engage students in authentic, personalized, and relevant inquiry thinking. Whereas we say the land acknowledgement to acknowledge our colonialized land and honor and respect the Indigenous people that resided on this land before us. Whereas it should be endeavored to continue to support and increase meaningful land acknowledgements, be it resolved that the Halton Catholic District School Board instruct the Director of Education to provide specific training for trustees, senior administration staff, and chaplaincy leaders that will teach and scaffold the creation of personalized land acknowledgements. This training should be completed no later than January 31st, 2023. Be it resolved that once the above training has been completed, that trustees and senior administration staff will take rotating turns to present the land acknowledgement at the beginning of our board meetings. This would mirror the same way that the prayer at the end of the meetings are rotated through individuals. Chaplaincy leaders will also be able to support the personalization of land acknowledgements at the school level.
Thank you, trustee O'Hearn Chinara. You will now have 5 minutes to open up discussions, and I'm going to invite trustee Chua to join you at some.
Do we need it moved?
Oh.
Seconded?
No, it's moved and
Seconded?
it's moved and seconded from the last meeting. Yes, yeah,
Okay.
yes. Okay. So I'm going to invite trustee O'Hearn Chinara and trustee Chua to open up the discussion. You have 5 minutes. Give me a second. The timer needs to start. Parliamentarian Kapoor, go ahead.
I would just like to say I will defer the conversation to student trustee Chua, but this motion, as I've been working with student trustee Chua, is made out of love and respect and honor. Over to you, student trustee Chua.
Trustee Chua.
Thank you so much. Okay. Turtle Island, the land on which we all learn, work, and play on, is rich in the history, traditions, and cultures of all Indigenous peoples who previously and currently reside on the land. In many MBE3U classes, equity, and Indigenous education groups within the HCDSB, there has been an enormous outcry from students, staff, and parents to increase Indigenous education efforts in and outside the classroom over the past few years. And as a Catholic school board, we play a vital role in fostering meaningful and truth and reconciliation efforts while shedding a light on the effects of colonialism. The aim of this motion is to foster and increase meaningful and inquiry-based learning about our land, past, present, and future within the Halton Catholic District School Board for all staff, students, and administration. It is important to ensure that the land acknowledgement does not become rote repetition. And prior to submitting the notice of motion for consideration, time was spent with our Indigenous HCDSB advisor, Sherry Savell, to understand what a personal land acknowledgement looks like and how it can be personalized for adding meaning. The intent is not to change the land acknowledgement. Rather, training is a key element for this motion to ensure that all feel comfortable personalizing our land acknowledgement and our scaffold throughout this education journey. Our superintendent, Ms. Nar, or Lori Nar, was also consulted for input regarding the role of our chaplaincy leaders. Discussion was held to ensure training is completed for that all, which will result in the knowledge and guidance to personalize in a meaningful way. This motion's underlying aim is one of respect for the land acknowledgement and increase for fulsome reflections.
Thank you, Trustee Chua. Now I shall open up the floor for discussions. Trustees have 3 minutes to ask questions, which does not include answers, question time. And we have 3 minutes to debate as per bylaw 10.4. So first I shall open up question time and then we can open up the debate. Okay. So trustees, you have the floor now. Trustee Bowie, you have 3 minutes to ask questions once again. Parliamentary Kapoor. Good. Go ahead.
Thank you so much, Mr. Chair. And through you, my question is for, or I won't say who it's for. My question is pertaining to the timeline on this motion. Whoever will be directing this, is this January 31st deadline realistic for this training to be completed?
Director Klein.
See who we got in our. I think it'd be, it might be problematic. I want to know if, yeah, I'm seeing nods over there. I think that would be problematic. Thanks.
Trustee Bowie.
Can I suggest an amendment as a student trustee that we perhaps move it either, I'll ask again the director what he thinks is best, whether we do end of April or May or end of the school year.
Director Klein. I would do one thing. Okay, let's go to Director Klein first. Director Klein, what do you think?
Through you, Mr. Chair, I think if you gave us the runway to the end of the school year, we could easily accomplish that.
Thank you. Let me go back to the trustees who brought this forward. It could be a friendly amendment. It could be just done that way if everybody agrees. Trustee Ohan Chanada and Trustee Chua, what do you think? Are you all amicable to making this change?
Yeah, this change, so this motion originally was supposed to be earlier on. Unfortunately, there were issues with it, which is why the January deadline does not work anymore, but amending it to be later on the date to ensure that we get the proper education is something that I feel would be.
Okay, Trustee Johan, you're okay with that?
Absolutely.
Okay.
We want to do this right the first time. So if we need more time and Jeff Kroll and Ms. Savelle need more time, we're all.
So let me go around the table and see if all trustees are okay with this change in date of time, the day. Okay, so what's the day? Director Klein, what day would you suggest? Yeah.
Through you, Mr. Chair, I think June 29th would be appropriate. We could probably have that done beforehand.
Okay, trustees, is June 29th. Trustees, is there agreement?
Is this a friendly amendment?
Yes.
Okay, I have a concern. Could we ask,
Go ahead, Trustee Kelly.
could we defer the question to Ms. Seville?
Ms. Civil, yeah, I think Ms. Civil is not.
I'm here if you can hear me.
Oh yeah, Ms. Civil, yeah, you're.
I know that the student trustees wanted to have it this school year. So it depends on how the trustees' schedules are from now until the end of June. But I'm confident that we could get the training done before then, even before March break, depending on everybody's schedules, that we can make the training happen.
Klein, March break is what I'm hearing. Is that okay with you and your staff?
Through you, Mr. Chair, we'll say by April 1st.
April 1st, okay. Trustees, are you okay with April 1st?
I oppose this.
You have concerns?
I just oppose it, so I don't take it.
Okay, so we cannot go. Then we have to make a formal amendment. So back to you, Trustee Bowie. You were asking for a date change. There's no consensus around the table, so we got to put in a formal date and take a vote on it. So if you'd like to tie up with trustee and put an amendment.
Thank you. Through you with the sponsorship of Trustee Agnew. I'd like to put forward an amendment that we replace where it says be completed no later than January 31st, 2023 with April 1st, 2023. April 1st.
By Trustee Agnew. Second, I'm looking for a seconder, please.
I'll second it.
Moved by Trustee Paul. Trustee Agnew, would you like to open up the discussion on behalf of?
I would defer to Trustee Bowie if
Trustee
she'd like
Bowie.
to make a
Trustee
couple
Bowie,
of
go
comments
ahead.
about her change.
Go ahead.
I think we've had discussion on it through the discussion of the friendly amendment. So I'd just like to put it forward to any other trustees and then to a vote.
Do we have, I see a few hands up. Are those hands up related to this particular amendment or they are in general? Okay, I'll go down the list. Trustee Murphy, it's not related. Okay, so I'll leave your name there. Vice Chair Agnew. Trustee Saunders.
Yeah, we had a good discussion with Chief Laforme, and he'd asked if he could be involved in some of the training. So I'm a little concerned about if we start rushing this, if we try and push it through too quickly, that may create some issues and maybe getting a fulsome training. And maybe through you, I could ask Sherry, what does the training look like? Would it be, is it in class training or is it videos or how do you see the training rolling out?
Ms. Sybil?
Yes, hi there. It would be what we've done before in the past. Either trustees would come to the boardroom, I would provide the training in person, or via Teams like we have in the past. And it would just be talking about the reasons why we're wanting to do this, how we can make it personal, how we can also go beyond the land acknowledgement. What the chief had also mentioned is that this is something that is really important and he really wants to be involved in it, like Trustee Saunders had said, but also that we are on the right path, that we are really leading the way when it comes to going beyond the land acknowledgement. So of course, doing it from a wholesome place, getting it right, but really it is about having those initial discussions because it doesn't have to be as for the lack of a better word, as hard as what we're looking at. We know that we come from a really good place in our hearts and our minds, and we always want to do better. So, it's just a live discussion that we can have these discussions and the reasons why we're moving forward, and to also talk about if we don't feel comfortable about doing it, through some of the reasons why we don't feel comfortable, and then just moving on and having those continuing discussions.
Thank you, Ms. Sybil. Trustee Saunders, do you have a?
Yeah, I don't think we should put a date. I think I agree with the director that it should be end of year, and I don't want to push this too quick because we may end up maybe sort of messing things up a bit. So I'm not in favor of this date. I prefer the year end.
Thank you, Trustee Saunders. I'll put your hand down on this item. We'll move down the speakers list. Trustee Kennedy, you have your hand up. Is it for this amendment or is it for in general?
Yeah, I just would say I would support June 29th, just based on what Trustee Saunders just mentioned.
Sorry, what date did you say?
June 29th.
End of the year? Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, so any other follow-up question you have? No? Okay, I'll put your hand down, okay? Moving down, we have Trustee Carabella. Do you want to talk to the amendment or the general? Okay, Trustee Ohonchanara, the amendment?
Yes, I do. Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just want to ask a question to the room. If our Indigenous Education Advisor, Ms. Seville, is the one who will be performing the training and is telling us she feels confident that this training can get done, I don't know why we need to extend it, unless we need to extend it for another reason that we don't feel as trustees will make ourselves available. I don't know, but that's our expert in the room. That's what she does for the Halton Catholic, is she's our Indigenous Education Advisor. And she said that we can get it done. And our conversation with the chief, he said we are way ahead everybody else, that he was proud of what we do here at Halton Catholic. So I will stick with the date. If Sherry's on board, I'm on board.
Thank you, Trustee Ohanchanara. Trustee Chua, do you have a comment? Oh, I don't see your hand up.
I'm not on Teams. Sorry.
Okay.
I have the wrong computer today.
Okay, so you need to put your hand up then. Okay.
Can't. Oh, well.
Trustee Paul.
I have concerns about delaying it in the sense that everything can drag on and it's very easy to get pushed aside. And I echo what Trustee O'Hairn-Chanada says is if our expert is saying this, why would we not listen to her? We're not the experts. We're not I personally am not Indigenous. I don't have that expertise. So if we've got somebody who's actually speaking to it, why would we not listen to them? It's another one that's just going to be pushed aside the longer we drag it out. So
thank you.
Thank you,
Trustee. Thank you, Trustee Powell. We have Trustee Saunders. You already had an opportunity to ask a question. Do you want to debate? So we had 3 minutes for questions, which is done. Now, if you want to debate this, we can debate it. Is that you want to use that opportunity for debate? Okay, so you have 3 minutes to debate.
And one of our experts is the director, and I don't want to put him in a position where we're creating a problem for him and for the superintendents and the teachers and stuff. So I'm going to rely on his expertise and go with what he thinks is reasonable. So that's and I agree. We do have several experts on this, but I would, given that he's the one going to be scheduling it stuff, I would go with him. So.
Thank you, Trustee Saunders. Trustee Kelly.
Yes, thank you, and through you, Chair. I believe it's Ms. Saville that is our expert here at Halton Catholic, and as she has mentioned, she does think it could be well done in advance before March break or at March break if need be. So I don't think an extension is needed. And as well, she mentioned that many of the students have had a concern and they did want it established before or during the new year. So I will not be supporting the extension of this amendment.
Thank you, Trustee Kelly. I do not see any other hands up for this amendment. Trustees want to speak to this amendment? Have I missed anybody? No. So seeing none, we shall call the vote on the amendment, which is changing the date to April 1st, 2023. This was moved by Trustee Agnew, seconded by Trustee Powell. Trustee Carabella, how do you vote?
Opposed.
Trustee Powell?
In favor.
Trustee Kennedy?
Opposed.
Trustee Ohanchanara?
In favor.
Vice Chair Agnew?
In favor.
Trustee Murphy? On the date, only the date change, you see yellow. You want me to come back to you? Okay, Trustee Saunders.
Opposed.
Trustee Kelly.
Opposed.
Trustee Bowie.
In favor.
Trustee Chua.
In favor.
Trustee Kuzma.
In favor.
Trustee Trustee Murphy.
Opposed.
So we have 3 in favor. We have 5 opposed. The motion fails. So we go back to January 31st. So can we have the motion cleared, please? Okay.
Point of order.
Yes.
Can we propose
Trustee Saunders, can you state your point of order?
Yes. Can we propose a different date?
So you want to amend it again?
Yes.
So that's not a point of order.
Okay.
That's an amendment. So
I didn't know.
We go through the hand up process. When your turn comes, we do that. So I think you have your name up there. I'm not sure. No. So put a hand up there. When it comes to your hand up, then we do the amendment. Parliamentary Kapoor, you have something to say? No? Good. Okay. Thanks. So trustees, we are back to the main motion now, which was moved by Trustee Ohanchanara and seconded by Trustee Powell. So going down the speakers list, we have Trustee Bowie, you are done. You have finished your time. Trustee Murphy, you have the floor. Your hand is up.
It's a general question.
Yes.
Mr. Chair, thank you. My question is, it talks about its students, so I just would like some clarity on what that looks like, which students, after the rollout of the trustee training, like, are we talking about elementary school students as well as secondary school students, or I'd just like some clarity on that, please.
Director Klein, would you be able to provide information, or do I go to Sherry?
Good morning. Can you repeat that, please?
Sure. We're talking, I know, about trustees getting their training done, but there is mention of at the school level. So my question is, which students are we talking about? Elementary students and secondary, or just at the secondary level?
Let's go actually to the trustees who have put it up.
Yeah.
Trustee Ohanjanada and Trustee Chua, would you like to answer the question? What was the intent of your motion?
Student trustee Chua?
Yeah, so the training will be going to chaplaincy leaders. So those chaplaincy leaders can have the discretion of, making committees in their schools for students who are interested in saying those acknowledgements and then further teaching the students. So it's out of their own discretion, but it's similar of how we do it in the school level of prayers every single morning. So it's similar to that.
So what I'm hearing, Trustee Chua, it's for secondary students. Your motion is intended for the secondary students. Is that what
The
I'm
motion
hearing?
is intended for both secondary and elementary. So
Okay.
the faith animators may also choose to create those groups if they choose.
Okay. Trustee Murphy, do you have your answer to the question, or you have a clarification?
Sorry, who are the individuals responsible at the elementary school level?
So the faith animators would be responsible. Sorry, any superintendent wants to answer this? Superintendent Nar, you're the expert.
Don't know if I'm an expert, but through you, Mr. Chair, certainly we don't have chaplaincy leaders at the elementary schools. We do have faith animators who are teachers in our schools and then volunteer their time as faith animators. So certainly, if we're looking to train staff, that could be one group of staff we would look to train.
Thank you. Trustee Murphy, do you have a follow-up?
I do. So for the students, is this voluntary?
Okay, I have to go back to Trustee Chua and Trustee Ohanchanada. Would you like to answer that? Is it voluntary?
Yes, this is voluntary. It's
Yes.
whatever students may choose to do.
Yes, it's voluntary. Trustee Murphy. Okay, so we'll move it down the speakers list to Vice Chair Agnew. Vice Chair Agnew, you have the floor.
Thank you very much, and through you, Mr. Chair. I just have a comment. Is that okay, Mr. Chair?
Sure, go ahead.
Thank you. I will be fully supporting this motion. I want to thank Trustee Chua and Trustee O'Hearns-Renata for bringing it forward, and just to Ms. Saville for all of her support on this. I think it's an excellent motion. I love the idea that we are trying to really get to the heart of the matter as it pertains to our land acknowledgements, so that they're not they're just not rote recited, that we have meaning behind them, that we understand why they're important, and all of those pieces. And I think we'll be better people for it. So I'm fully in support of it. I also have complete faith in working with Mrs. Saville over the years on a number of different initiatives, as well as training initiatives. I have full confidence in her ability to deliver this training. As she stated, she is our expert within the board, and she does excellent work. And as such, like I said, I'll be supporting this motion full-heartedly. So thank you so much for bringing it forward.
Thank you, Vice Chair Agnew. On the speakers list, we have Trustee Carabella, Trustee Kennedy, Trustee Saunders. Trustee Carabella, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I had the similar question to Trustee Murphy about the being involved in the schools. So it's both elementary and secondary. But as student trustee Chua was mentioning about committees, I'm just wondering how is it going to be unfolded? What does the training look like, and what does scaffolding, in particular, what is meant by to teach and scaffold? Thank you.
Let's bring Ms. Saville. Ms. Saville, would you like to speak to this? You've been deeply
Sure.
involved with this.
Just so that some of the trustees know as well, that a lot of our elementary schools are already doing their own going beyond the land acknowledgement. So there are teachers, there are principals in our system who's actually doing this as well, and making it. And the students are the ones that are wanting to go beyond, to learn a little bit more just than what the land acknowledgement is. So it already is happening in our schools, both in elementary and in secondary. The scaffolding would be the same as what we would do in any sort of subject matter, that we would start off as a, with JK and SK, and everybody has seen the beautiful French land acknowledgement that was already created. And we also have early learning teachers who have also done their own with a couple of sentences, not getting away from the meaning by no means, but also scaffolding that learning, that as you get older in the bigger grades, then you'll have an understanding by the time you're in grade 12 of what all those words in the land acknowledgement mean, and what our responsibility as stewards of the land, and what our responsibility as just being humans to each other are. Yes, so it's already happening in both elementary and secondary.
Mr. Chair, there is no sound.
Trustee Carabella, you had no sound.
I had no sound. Okay.
There was no sound for me or for Trustee Carabella?
For neither of you.
Me. Okay, you have the sound now. So, Trustee Carabella, I'm hearing that you want to amend the motion. So, could you let Ms. Swindon know the exact words and where you'd like them inserted?
Okay.
Ms.
So
Swindon?
in the first paragraph, that the Halton Catholic District School Board instruct the Director of Education to provide specific training for trustees, senior administration staff, and the chaplaincy leaders. And then here I would put in paragraphs, those up in parentheses, those who wish to participate, end of parentheses, that will teach and scaffold the creation of a personalized land acknowledgement. This training should be completed no later than January 31st. And then at the end of the second, be it resolved. So to support the personalization of land acknowledgements at the school level for those who wish to participate.
Trustee Carabella, what you see on the screen, is that what you're looking for?
Yes.
Looks accurate? Okay. So this is an amendment to the main motion moved by Trustee Carabella. Looking for a seconder. Seconded by Trustee Kennedy.
Sorry, Mr. Chair.
You're seconding the motion.
Just a point of understanding, point of order, clarification. In addition to those amendments, is it possible for another trustee to recommend an amendment to the date with those amendments? Okay.
Sorry. So Trustee Carabella has moved. I'm looking for a seconder.
I'll second it.
Trustee Murphy, second. Okay, so before we proceed, I'll just let trustees know if you have an amendment like that, let Ms. Swindon know in advance so she's prepared, just to save a little bit of time. So, okay, so we have a motion, we have an amendment moved by Trustee Carabella, second by Trustee Murphy. Trustee Carabella, you have 3 minutes, you have 5 minutes to open up discussion. You have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just very briefly, I believe that this motion should be voluntary. People who want to participate can do so, and those who do not should also be respected. We already say a land acknowledgement, people can feel that this is complete for them, being composed by the chief himself. Some people may not want to personalize it, yet respect and keep it as it is composed. So I do think that it should be left up to the person to decide if they'd like to participate in this training. Thank you.
Thank you, Trustee Carabella. We have a list of speakers and we had some hands up before. So once again, I'm going down the speakers list and asking trustees if they want to speak to this amendment. Trustee Kennedy, do you want to speak to this amendment or was it on the main motion?
I'm not sure how it relates, but the date of the amendment is the only.
So that's a different change. So I'll leave your name out there. Trustee Ohanchanara, you want to speak to this amendment?
Yes, I would, Mr. Chair. Thank you. I'd just like to make a comment. Trustee Carabella, I understand the intent. My only concern is that I don't think at Halton Catholic we force anybody to do anything that they're uncomfortable with. And I think the discussion has already been had where if a trustee, we didn't feel we've been scaffolded enough, we weren't going to be forced to do it. We don't have that in our prayer, right? We don't have voluntary, for the prayer that we have. So I will not be supporting this because I really don't think we need to put it in. I think our school board and our staff will not force people to do something they're not comfortable with. So on that, I will not be supporting the amendment.
Thank you, Trustee Ohanchanara. Trustee Bowie, is your hand up for this amendment? Okay, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and through you. I will not be supporting this amendment. The language of the motion already provides for the voluntary nature of this. It only calls for staff to provide specific training. It's not mandating anything. And nevertheless, we don't want to encourage people not to participate. The point in this training is to have people to participate and to provide that education, which is necessary for us to further these causes in our board. Reconciliation is not optional for us. It's something that we all should feel obligated to participate in. And this is also not mandating anything for students either. It's about chaplaincy leaders having the knowledge to further reconciliation within our schools. It's incredibly important. Now, I was going to speak with this with the main motion, but we've had significant and extensive consultation with Indigenous student trustees, many of whom we work with very regularly. And the personalization of land acknowledgements is not something simply to do to a performative nature. It goes beyond the land acknowledgements, and it's incredibly important. It calls us to reflect on our own action taken towards reconciliation. It calls us to reflect on the history of treaty rights, to learn something new when we're reciting a land acknowledgement. Because if we simply just state a land acknowledgement in its current form and repeat it every day, every school morning, whatever it is, every board meeting, then it's not as meaningful to the individual person that's reciting it, and eventually we tune it out of our minds. It's important that we address each land acknowledgement personally and that we take effort to educate ourselves and connect specifically to action on reconciliation whenever we state a land acknowledgement. That's something that I've been taught since grade 9, that I've been taught through consultation with my close colleagues. And it's something that I hosted a video on at Loyola, and it's all of these things that are incredibly important for us to be able to really move beyond just performative actions. And so this isn't something that we want to encourage as being voluntary. It's not a passion project. It is something that is necessary. We all know the potency and power of education, and it's something that is incredibly necessary for us to continue moving forward on these issues. So while I respect the nature of this motion, I hope that no one would feel uncomfortable participating in these sessions because there's little to feel uncomfortable about. It's a past that we have to reckon with ourselves. I will not be supporting this amendment because I do not want to send forward the message that reconciliation is in any way optional for anyone. Thank you.
Thank you, Trustee Bowie. Moving down, Trustee Chua, do you want to speak to this or this amendment? Okay. Trustee Ohanchanara spoke to this. So again, we have the amendment, which is moved by Trustee Carabella, seconded by Trustee Murphy. I do not see any other trustees hand up. So Trustee Carabella, you get to close. You have 3 minutes.
That's fine. I think we can just go to the vote. I'm glad to hear that as I was saying that I read it, it wasn't clear to me. So my amendment just makes it clear. It's not to subtract from the motion. Thank you.
Thank you, Trustee Carabella. With that, I will call the vote on the amendment, which is moved by Trustee Carabella, seconded by Trustee Murphy. Trustee Powell, how do you vote?
Opposed.
Trustee Ohanchanara?
I'm opposed.
Trustee Kennedy?
Can you come back to me, Mr. Chair?
Yes. Vice Chair Agnew?
I'm opposed.
Trustee Murphy,
In favor?
Trustee Saunders,
In favor?
Trustee Kelly,
Opposed.
Trustee Bowie,
Opposed.
Trustee Chua,
Opposed.
Trustee Kuzma,
Opposed.
Trustee Carabella,
In favor?
Trustee Kennedy,
In favor.
and Trustee Duarte is in favor. So we have 5 in favor, 4 opposed. The amendment carries. We shall now move on to the main motion as amended. The main motion was moved by Trustee Ohan Chanada and seconded by Trustee Powell. The motion is in front of us. So we have a speakers list. We have Trustee Ohan Chanada, you are closing. Do you would like to speak to this motion again?
Through you, Mr. Chair, I do have, sorry, go ahead.
I get to close. Yeah,
But I don't want to close yet.
okay. So I'll leave your hand up there. Trustee Saunders, you have your hand up. We are talking about the main motion now as
Yeah.
amended.
Yeah,
You have the
so
floor.
I wanted just to propose an amendment that the date be changed to what the Director of Education had asked for, June 29.
You are proposing an amendment to the main motion.
Yeah.
Moved by Trustee Saunders, the date is June 29th. May I ask for seconder, please? Trustee Kennedy, you second. Okay. So we have a motion which is amendment which is moved by Trustee Saunders, seconded by Trustee Kennedy. Trustee Saunders,
Mr. Chair.
so Trustee Saunders, you get to open discussion. You have 5 minutes.
Oh, I respect the director and his timing, and I just thought I don't want to go busting anybody to try and get this done too quick. So I'm just, that's why I think I just want to give them the time to do the right job. And, we have the chief involved, that would give him time, so.
Thank you, Trustee Saunders. We have a speakers list here. I'm going to open up the floor for discussion. Trustee Ohan Chanada, you want to speak to this amendment or the main motion?
Yes, Mr. Chair.
Go
I'd
ahead.
like to speak to the proposed amendment
Go ahead, Trustee Ohan Chanada.
with a question to Director Klein. Knowing what you know now, Director Klein, and the discussion we've had with Ms. Saville, do you think this date we could move it up, the amendment of June 29th? Do you think we could walk it back a month or two? I don't know if I asked that question properly.
Director Klein.
Through you, Mr. Chair, yes, I do. I do think so. So I'd given, I think, plenty of runway for the end of June, but hearing the staff that I've heard from, the key staff in terms of this, they said March break. I thought April 1st might be reasonable, but if we, so I think April 1st would be reasonable, because I did hear that from those staff whom I trust.
Thank you. Trustee Ohan Chanada.
Thank you, Director Klein, or through you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Director Klein, for the new information. So we're still debating the amended date of June 29th. Is that correct? Or can I amend that?
We can try for a friendly amendment once again.
I would like to make a friendly amendment so
Okay.
that we can,
Thank you. Let's go around the table. So
So-
Trustee Ohan Chanada, provided.
I would, based upon the new information that just come forward to my ears, I would like to make a friendly amendment to move June 29th up to May 1st,
Thank you, Trustee Ohan Chanada.
2023.
Can we see the change there, Ms. Sinan? Okay, I'll go around the table and see if we have unanimous consent for this. Trustees, are we okay to change the date to May 1st, 2023?
Yes.
Oh, okay, I'm sorry. Okay, let's go to Ms. Sable before we come back here.
Hi there. I just wanted reiterate what Trustee Bowie was saying, that truth and reconciliation is not an option within our school board. We do have calls to action as well within the TRC, which is calls to action 62, 63, and more so in 64, where it calls on non-denominational schools to provide Indigenous education. And this is just one of the starting points that we have. I also want to just make a mention as well that we are not forcing anybody to do anything. We're not personalizing or taking away the land acknowledgement, but moving beyond the land acknowledgement and making sure that we understand what those words and commitments mean. I work for a Catholic school board, and we know the history within the Truth and Reconciliation. We know the history, especially within the residential schools, of the religious orders having a major role within the residential schools. We're just dipping our toes in right now in the waters that is very, very large when we're looking at Indigenous education, when we're looking at truth and reconciliation, and when we're looking at embedding different perspectives in our school system. So I do want to say that, you know, if part of the training would be, you know, how many of you believe that you are treaty people? And every single person should put up their hand, because we are all treaty people, and we all need to understand the roles and responsibility we have as newcomers, as settlers, as Indigenous people, and also the role that the institution, the school systems have within the roles that we play on a daily basis. I will be providing the training. I have no problem making sure that the training is done by May 1st, and the students are expecting this of us. This is a student motion, and does not come from a staff motion, but a student motion, and the students are expecting us to do to see this into fruition by the end of the school year.
And so we have the motion that was passed. I could move to reconsider that motion because of the information you just provided. However, we have a motion on the table which was moved by Trustee Saunders and seconded by Trustee Kennedy. So we will have to deal with that motion first. Parliamentary Kapoor. Right. So you're holding the motion. Yes. Correct. So we will come back to the motion to reconsider that because of the new information. So trustees, we have information here on our screen. We are first reconsidering the date, May 1st, 2023. Is there unanimous consent to accept the date? Okay. So we have unanimous consent to accept the date. So we can remove the red part there. And so we have the motion which is moved by Trustee Saunders, seconded by Trustee Kennedy. Any discussion on this to the trustees who have your hand up? Do we have a unanimous consent to adopt this? Okay, so the motion carries unanimously. We shall now go back to the main motion, and I would like to put a motion to reconsider. So trustees, I'm going to hand the gavel to Vice Chair Agnew. I'm on the prevailing side, and I can move a motion to reconsider the addition of the words "those who wish to participate."
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So we have a motion to reconsider that has been moved by.
Point of order.
Yes, Trustee Carabella.
Thank you. Isn't it to a parliamentary inquiry, isn't the point, a motion to reconsider have to be put on by someone who was on the side, what's it called?
Yes.
Prevailing side.
So he actually, so thank you, Trustee Carabelli, for your point of order. Trustee Dewart was actually on the prevailing side of the amendment. So he's put the motion forward.
Right.
To reconsider.
So shouldn't he be the one saying it?
No, I have to take the gavel because it's, so he's put the motion to reconsider. So as I was saying, there's a motion to reconsider on the floor from Trustee Dewart. I would need a seconder for that motion. Trustee O'Hearns-Renata seconds. Thank you. You have 5 minutes to open discussion. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I do not need 5 minutes. I did not have the information provided by Ms. Seville, and I think that's great information to know, and I should have had that before we voted on this. But again, trustees, I think from what I'm hearing from the student trustee who's Trustee Chua and Trustee O'Hearns-Renata and Ms. Seville is that at HCDSB we provide all information and everything to the students. Again, it's all optional. It's trustees, students have to, the spirit is there. And I think we need to look at it in that light. And although those words were put in with good intentions, and Ms. Seville has given us more insight into why that should not be there. And that's the reason, Madam Chair, I'm proposing that we reconsider this motion.
Thank you, Chair Dewart. So again, I do see some hands up on the in the chat, but I don't know if those were for the main motion or if they are pertaining to this particular motion. So is there someone that wanted to speak to this motion for reconsideration? Trustee Carabella, is that you're at the bottom there of the list, so I assume it's for this? Okay, go ahead.
Thank you. So I would just like to say then that it's clear that it is voluntary for all involved. If you think it's so necessary, I think still the amendment is good to have it in there because people who will see it, who have not been at this meeting and have not heard all the debate we've had about it, should know that it's optional for them. It's just more clear. And my experience with motions is that the clearer they are, the more beneficial it is for everyone involved. So I'm opposed to removing this amendment. Thank you.
Thank you, Trustee Carabella. Was there, oh, sorry, Trustee Murphy, go ahead.
I just wanted to comment. I don't think it's necessarily a deterrent. I think there's enough students, as you've specified, that are really, really keen to personalize their land acknowledgement, which I think is fantastic. But I think in the spirit of, you know, you talk about performative action and rote memorization, I just think it should be clear that the choice is being made is coming from the choice of, especially with the younger students, or maybe they don't have enough background knowledge. I don't see the harm in keeping that in. I think if there's enough interest, it's not going to deter anybody from selecting to do a personalized land acknowledgement.
Thank you, Trustee Murphy. Trustee Chua, you had your hand up for this particular reconsideration.
I will say this motion was drafted out of the heart and wants of students. Our students are wanting this, and they're the reason that, of course, we should be here. Taking away the brackets of those who wish to participate would be beneficial because at the end of the day, as Trustee Bowie said, reconciliation, truth of reconciliation is not optional. We should all be able to participate in truth and reconciliation actions and learn more about our land and learn more about our land acknowledgement and to personalize it. I do understand for the student part, if chaplaincy leaders are making those councils to make it for those who wish to participate action, but for senior administration, chaplaincy staff, and senior staff, it should not be an optional thing because I do worry that what happens if no one does it? What is the point of this motion? We aren't able to learn from our amazing Indigenous advisor and about our land. Yeah.
Thank you, Trustee Chua. Trustee Bowie, you had your hand up.
Thank you. I'd just like to make one quick comment about it being optional for students. We understand that students have the desire to pursue these initiatives. And frankly, as someone who works with students and high school students on a daily basis, I don't think we would have any issue getting students in for training sessions like these. These training sessions are not for students. They're for senior staff, for trustees, and chaplaincy leaders, because these are the people who are leading these initiatives in our school who can help provide this to our students. And frankly, that interest may not be there. These people are very busy. We all understand that, but we have to make sure that we are promoting that these are not necessarily mandatory, but they are not optional things for us to do, because we need our leaders and our adults who might be a little bit more hesitant to pursue things like these to receive that education, because as we all know, education and knowledge is power, and we need those leaders in our schools to be able to further provide that for our students. So I'll reiterate, this isn't about it being optional for students. It's about it being optional for staff, which is so sorely necessary.
Thank you, Trustee Bowie. I see Trustee Saunders, you have your hand up to speak to this motion.
Yeah, sorry, I just want to clarify. The student trustees seem to think that the choices between it's optional or not. Like I still think from what we understood was it's still optional. It's just that we're not putting the words in there. Is that still what I understand? Yeah, because I didn't understand what they seem to be speaking to. It's mandatory. It's not. It's never going to be mandatory. It's just these words won't be there. So is that my understanding? Okay.
Trustee Kuzma, you had your hand up.
So kind of to thank you through Madam Chair. I just wanted to kind of help answer Saunders. Is we're not saying that it's mandatory, and we're just thinking that putting those who wish to participate in that will imply that, oh, it's optional. Well, it is optional, but it'll make people think, oh, I don't have to do this. I don't want to do this, versus the thought of this is important. I may not want to do it, but I should do it. And it just puts it into their head that they shouldn't do it and they don't have to. So I'm just thinking if we leave it out, yes, it's still optional, but it doesn't put the thought in their head that they really don't have to. I kind of suck at wording, but.
Thank you, Trustee Kuzma. So Trustee Murphy, did you have a specific question? Because you've debated already.
I just want to make sure I'm clear on that. I'm asking just for clarity, not to be contrary, just so it's clear. I'm understanding that the people who are going to be delivering the training, you want to make that mandatory, right? Because obviously this is the purpose of your motion, which I appreciate. But the students is what I'm asking about. Like if there's students that have a choice at which point they want to come forward, like now I'm ready to do a personalized land acknowledgement, or is there going to be like, okay, now we all are doing a personalized land acknowledgement, and that is that sort of. Could we edit it to say, like, take out the first parentheses, those who wish to participate in reference to the administration, but then leave the one in at the school level for now?
Did you want to answer that?
Yeah.
Thank you, Trustee Murphy. Did you want to answer that, Trustee Bowie?
Yeah, I can answer that. There's no wording in the motion that refers to the training of students or the participation of students in any manner. That last sentence there, it says that chaplaincy leaders will also be able to support the personalization of land acknowledgement at the school level. Ending it there, that means that chaplaincy leaders who have received the training could just do it by themselves every day. It's up to them through the training that they have, whether they decide they want to involve students or not. There's nothing here talking about training for students, whether it be optional or mandatory or whatever it may be. This is just about chaplaincy leaders.
Thank you, Trustee Boyd. To your question, Trustee Murphy? Okay. Consulting with, good? Yep, you're good to go. Go ahead.
Thank you. Through you, Madam Chair, I just wanted to speak to the motion to reconsider. I was going to say rescind, and then I cut a whole craze. Listen, I'm just going to speak from a personal experience. You know, I'm excited to learn this. Am I scared? Yes. Do I know enough about it? No. But am I going to be trained? And then I'm hopefully going to feel comfortable. If I don't feel comfortable, I'm not going to do it at the beginning, but I'm going to continue to grow and learn. And I'm so excited to get this started. So let's get it started.
Thank you, Trustee O'Hearns-Renota. So seeing no other hands with oh, sorry. Trustee, so I don't know for what I thought it's okay. Is that okay? Thank you, Trustee Kennedy. Trustee Powell, go ahead.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I have a question, and again, to echo Trustee Murphy, I'm not trying to be contrary. I do have a question. When we did the Lord's Prayer motion, did we have those words in there, those who wish to participate?
I can have Director Klein answer that question.
Through you, Mr. Chair, in terms of, you said the Lord's Prayer? I honestly don't know. I'm wondering if someone else on staff would remember that. I don't see it. It's either we don't know or we did not.
And I ask that because when we have in our secondary schools, we have, I think it's about 40% of students are not Catholic. Anyway, a high percentage. So I'm saying at that point, it would be elective, correct?
Sorry, staff answer.
I'm asking you, Madam Chair, sorry, through you.
Yeah, that's okay. So I would send that over to Director Klein.
Okay.
Sorry, through you, Madam Chair. I'm still confused. Are you asking about the high school students and the Lord's Prayer?
I'm asking, I guess my point is, if we're treating this isn't an elected, like this is our land acknowledgement, right? Through the TRC, through the Truth and Reconciliation Commission, we are supposed to do this. We have also voted as a Catholic board to put in the Lord's Prayer, right? They go hand in hand. So if we're putting in those who wish to participate and we're getting hung up on the wording, why would we not have that in the Lord's Prayer when we have a high percentage of children in our secondary schools that are not Catholic? They elect to, like they elect to say, okay.
You're asking my thoughts on whether to make them both the same in terms of their option for it? Well, I think it is important to have the land acknowledgement. I honestly do. So if you want my take on it, I think it's as Sherry said earlier, this connects with us, our own history as Catholic schools, for one. And I think it does speak to the call for us in that regard as Catholics. So I think it is very important.
Thank you, Director Klein. Trustee Kennedy, you had your hand up and I'm sorry that I missed you.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I would support what Trustee Murphy has said earlier about the first amendment where it says those who wish to participate. I believe that makes sense to remove. But for the last part, I believe Trustee Bowie was saying, you know, the chaplaincy leaders, it's not their intention to teach students, but they can if they choose to. So given it's with elementary students as well, should we not have something in there voluntary about parents, you know, if they, you said it's voluntary, would that be the parents deciding that from grade 8 and under and the high school students deciding that on themselves? How does that work?
Director Klein, do you want to take that question or refer it out?
Through you, Madam Chair. I think this should be something that I'd like to know what the vision is in terms of the actualization of it with Ms. Saville and the other sponsors of it.
Sherry, are you okay to answer that? Are you on the line?
Yeah, no, I'm still here. Can you hear me? Okay.
Did you hear the question okay?
Yeah, I did. And yeah, maybe just repeat the question one more time, just so I can have a clear answer for you.
Trustee Kennedy?
I'm just wondering for it's elementary and high school students, we do the land acknowledgement. For the elementary students, would it be up to the parents to decide if their child is not to do any specific training? Like they exempt them from certain training, other programs that we do. Would it be the parents in the elementary schools, and the high schools would be the students themselves? I believe the surveys, I know there's not a survey, but students in elementary, the survey went to the parents, and high school went to the students themselves.
Definitely, you know, we all need a little bit more in the way of education when it comes to Indigenous people, the land acknowledgement. We, you know, the other thing is do we ask parents if kids can take certain subjects and should they be exempt from certain things? I agree with Trustee Trustee Janet, that you know, if we're uncomfortable about doing this, then we get to a level playing field and we become a little bit more comfortable. When we're asking for you know, the parents may also want to learn a little bit more. And will we have parent engagement? Absolutely. Parents need to be involved in this because, again, like I said earlier, we're all treaty people. We all need to know what our roles in the Truth and Reconciliation is and how we can move forward in that regard. Just like as chaplain leaders, the chaplaincy leaders in all secondary schools, I've already done some training with them, and they are the ones that have requested as well. And I believe all the superintendents also, as well as the trustees, have received that book called "We All Go Going Beyond the Land Acknowledgement," or "We All Go Back to the Land." And it was through the chaplaincy leaders that wanted to have a little bit more in the way of their own training, so that they can be well equipped when they are talking about the land acknowledgement, when they're talking to students. And it has been through vice principals and principals in the elementary school that have also asked the same thing. So, I don't feel that, again, I'm reiterating that everything that we do is certainly not by force. Everything is done voluntary. We don't want to force anybody. So we want people who do not want to participate.
Thank you, Sherry. Do you have a follow-up, Trustee Kennedy?
I got the gist of the answer with the technology, but I got it.
Okay, seeing no other hands with respect to this motion, I'm going to go ahead and take it to a vote.
Closing.
Oh, sorry, Mr. Chair. Go ahead and close.
Thank you, Madam Chair. We have had a great discussion on this changed, reverting it back. And I respect everybody's opinions and on this topic, but I think we really need to think what is the objective of this entire motion and whether it's going to be positive or beneficial to our students, our staff. And I think it's going to be beneficial. So, Madam Chair, with that, I'd like to request that you take the vote.
Yeah, thank you. So we'll go ahead now and take this to a recorded vote. So I will start with Trustee Carabella.
Point of order, just for clarity, because we're doing on a vote now on the motion to reconsider, and then we go back to the motion.
Yes, so the vote right now is just on the motion to reconsider.
Yeah, so I'm opposed.
Okay. Trustee Powell?
In favor.
Trustee Kennedy?
Opposed.
Trustee O'Hearns-Renota?
In favor.
Vice Chair, it was in favor. Trustee Murphy?
Abstain.
Trustee Saunders?
I'm in favor.
Trustee Kelly?
In favor.
Trustee Dewar?
In favor.
Thank you. Trustee Bowie?
In favor.
Trustee Chua?
In favor.
Trustee Kuzma?
In favor.
Great. Thank you very much. Just bear with me. Okay, so the motion to reconsider is adopted. That means that the amendment is now open again for discussion. Is there any trustee who has not already spoken to the amendment who wishes to speak to the amendment?
Main motion.
Right, so now they can speak to that. Okay, so basically, do you have any additional comments on what we just talked about? Bella?
Thank you. Just to say that I'm not saying that the land acknowledgement is optional. It's for this motion that the training in the personalization of the land acknowledgement should just be more clear. That's all. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. As I've said repeatedly, the motion to reconsider is an American invention, and therefore I blame this confusion on that fact. What you just voted on was to reopen the entire debate on adding the language in blue. You did not make a final decision on whether to add the language in blue. You voted to reconsider it. So the question in front of you now, again, is whether to add the language in blue. Despite the fact that you've had a extensive debate on it, it's open again. And so the next vote will be on whether to add the language in blue.
Thank you very much, Parliamentarian Kapoor. Is that everybody clear with that? Okay. Are we good to go right to a vote on that matter? Yep. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead again and we're going to take a vote. So if you are in favor, then you are in favor of having this language. If you are opposed, then you are opposed to having this language added. Okay. All right. For ease of simplicity, because this is the list I have, Trustee Carabella.
I'm in favor.
Okay, thank you. Trustee Powell. So if you're in favor, you're in favor of adding this language. If you're opposed, you don't want this language in.
I'm opposed.
Okay. Thank you. Trustee Kennedy.
Opposed.
Okay. Trustee O'Hearn-Zernota.
I'm opposed.
Okay. Vice Chair Agnew. I'm opposed. Trustee Murphy.
Abstain.
Okay. Trustee Saunders.
Opposed.
Okay. Trustee Kelly.
Opposed.
Chair Dewart.
Opposed.
Student Trustee Bowie.
Opposed.
Student Trustee Chua.
Opposed.
And Student Trustee Kuzma.
Opposed.
Great. Okay. So that language then will be removed, correct? And we can go back to the main motion. Perfect. So I am, once again, I think everyone has spoken to it, but just for clarity, if anybody would like to put their hand up to speak to the main motion before we take a recorded vote, I have that open now. Okay. So Trustee Carabella, is your hand still up there for the main motion? Okay. So Trustee Carabella.
Thank you. So to who am I, the chair? So understanding everything that's going to be involved, was there a cost associated with rolling out this training? And what would that cost be? Thank you.
Director Klein, did you want to address that?
Through you, Madam Chair. Based on what I've seen and know so far, it would be minimal, but I'm not sure if that's been considered by any of our staff or the trustees who have sponsored it. But I'm looking at this as something that would fall within the purview of the work that our lead would do and what chaplains would do and what other leaders would do. It fits in with what our priorities are as a board and what our priorities are as a Catholic system. And so I can't see anything that would be noteworthy.
Trustee Carabella, did you have a follow-up? Thank you, Director Klein. No? Okay, thank you very much. Trustee Bowie, you have the floor.
Thank you. And I feel as though we've exhausted this for quite a while now, but I haven't gotten a chance to say it yet, so I just have to bring it up. We did take this to a vote with the Student Senate a couple of times, and we had lengthy discussion about it and what it would entail, what it would look like at the school level. We worked with our student leaders to sort of workshop it a little bit. And in the final vote, we had 95% in favor. We had one person who voted opposed and one person who abstained. The rest of our Student Senate were in favor. So the students are wholeheartedly in support of this. I just want to take a second to commend the work of Student Trustee Chua. Throughout this process of bringing this motion forward to the board, there's been delays, there's been obstructions. Student Trustee Chua has done more staff consultation on this motion than I've ever seen any student trustee do before. So I just want to commend her for her efforts. This has been thoroughly thought out and consulted with students. So congratulations to her for bringing this forward. And another thing that I just wanted to say is that, you know, we don't train students. We don't force them to do anything. Students are not our employees. We teach students. We teach students, we give them the knowledge that they need to move forward and to become good citizens in line with our Catholic graduate expectations and to represent our board well. And that is exactly what this motion is giving us the capacity to do. It's giving staff the knowledge and the tools to be able to teach our students. And that's ultimately one of the most important things that we can do. So again, kudos to Student Trustee Chua for bringing this forward. This is definitely something that students are excited to see move forward. And thank you everyone for the lengthy discussion today.
Thank you, Trustee Bowie. And I see Trustee Kennedy, you have your hand up.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Vice Chair. Chair of Chairs. So we did a lot, thank you. So we did a lot of consultation with students. Did we do consultation with parents as well and their support for the motion?
Director Klein, would you like to address?
Through you, Madam Chair. To my knowledge, there was no survey of parents either from in the birthing of this or afterward.
Trustee Kennedy, did you have a follow-up? Okay, great. So seeing no other hands in the chat, I will go ahead and take this motion to a vote. Oh, sorry. Yes, I'm sorry, Trustee O'Hearn-Zernota. Would you like to close?
Thank you. Through you, Madam Chair. I just wanted to say to student trustee Chua, and if she has some statements, go ahead, that this has been a labor of love, that I've learned a lot from you, and it's been really, really wonderful working alongside you through this long, arduous process. But over to you.
Thank you so much, Trustee Trinata. I will say this is a labor of love from what our students are wanting, and what I've been hearing for the past few years, actually. I just want to emphasize that it is important for us as a whole board to listen to our students and to acknowledge our land and acknowledging the history and uplifting our Indigenous education, especially since we are a Catholic school board. We have a lot, we have a lot of responsibility to spearhead truth and reconciliation actions. And I hope that all of you can be in favor of this motion so that our students are able to gain inquiry-based learning about, our land and where it originated from.
Thank you, Trustee Chua. So I'm going to go ahead now and take this to a recorded vote. So just for clarity again, because we've had a lot of discussions and voting on this matter, we are now taking a vote on the main motion. Again, just for ease of simplicity, I'm going to go ahead with the list that I have here. So Trustee Carabella, how do you vote?
Abstain.
Okay, Trustee Powell?
Sorry, just clarifying. Yes, in favor.
Okay, Trustee Kennedy?
If you may come back to me, Madam Chair, I'm just reading everything again.
Sure. Trustee O'Hearn-Janota?
I'm in favor.
Okay. Myself, I am in favor. Trustee Murphy?
Abstain.
Trustee Saunders?
In favor.
Okay. Trustee Kelly?
In favor.
Trustee Dewart?
In favor.
Trustee Bowie?
In favor.
Trustee Chua?
In favor.
Trustee Kuzma?
In favor.
And back to you, Trustee Kennedy.
In favor.
Okay, great. Thank you very much, everyone. I will now pass the gavel back to Trustee Dewart.
Thank you, everyone. I think we learned a lot with that motion. And we move on down the action items. Item 9.2, revised budget estimates. Superintendent. Okay, there's a request for a recess. So we'll take a 3-minute recess. It's 8:57. We'll be back at 9. Call to order. Call to order. Call to order. Okay, moving on down the action items list. Item 9.2, 2022-23 revised budget estimate. Superintendent Loft, would you like to speak to this before I read the motion? The three motions.
Yes, thank you. Through you, Mr. Chair. I'd actually like to first start off thanking the finance team for completing our 22-23 revised estimate statements. It was extremely challenging this year, but not only the finance team, I also want to thank our senior staff, managers, principals and vice principals, and all staff. A budget just isn't the work of the finance team. It actually is the work of everybody. So as we know, this is a challenging year for all of us, and with revised estimates and the support and assistance of so many went into this to achieve a compliant budget. So thank you, everyone. Senior Manager Adam Cross will now walk us through a revised estimate presentation. And following that, Mr. Chair, you mentioned you're going to read the motion then?
Yes.
Okay. Thank you. And Mr. Chair, then, if Adam's okay to begin.
Yeah, Senior Manager Cross, sorry.
Yep. Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you to all of the trustees for allowing me to present a quick summary of our revised budget estimates. So there's four main things that I'll go through tonight. First, we'll talk about enrollment, as that's the major driver of our funding. Then we'll go into the changes in revenue, as well as the changes in expenses from our original estimates. Now, some of you will be new. This will be the first time you're being exposed to our school budget process as trustees. So hopefully we'll be able to answer any questions that you may have as we move along. And then the last piece, we'll talk about our surplus deficit for the year based on our revised estimates. So this first slide, it outlines the change in enrollment, and in our case, a decrease in enrollment from our 21-22 school year to our 2022-23 revised estimates. When we speak about enrollment, we refer to the term of average daily enrollment. And what average daily enrollment deals with is there are 2 points during the year where we count our students. And basically, we take 50% of that first count date, which is October 31st, 50% of our second count date, which is March 31st, and combine them to get our average daily enrollment for the year. This is what we're funded off of when we are dealing or referring to our grants for student needs, or GSN. So you'll see in this slide from our actual financial results that we presented at the previous meeting, we're projecting to have lower enrollment by 237 students for this upcoming school year. When we look at our revised estimate enrollment compared to our original budget that was passed in June, that decrease increases to a decrease of 631.8 ADE for the two budget periods. So that's a significant drop in enrollment, which means there's a significant drop in our grants for student needs between what we originally budgeted for in June and what we're amending our budget or revising our budget for in December here. That 1.74% decrease in enrollment leads to a 6.8% decrease in our grants for student needs. So a significant amount of funding that, as Aaron or Superintendent Loss has just spoken to, required a lot of work, not only from finance, but from the board as a whole to ensure that we're still providing the level of education that we want as a Catholic school board, but also staying within the parameters that are allowed by the Ministry of Education when it comes to our funding and in terms of our deficit or compliance budget for those purposes. So looking at revenue, I just wanted to highlight some of the kind of key areas that are impacted with respect to our revenue and this funding. So the first line there, you'll see our provincial legislative grants, and it's a decrease of roughly $3 million, or just shy of $3 million. So there are a few major areas that were impacted by this reduced enrollment that led to that number. The first being a reduction in Pupil Foundation allocation. And when we talk about Pupil Foundation allocation, this is basically like anything in the classrooms. So anything related to the students, anything in the classroom, including teachers and supply costs. That's what we're referring to when we're speaking to Pupil Foundation, for those of you who are new as trustees to the school board. So we saw a $3.8 million decrease in funding due to the reduction in enrollment there. We also saw a $300,000 decrease in our school foundation allocation, and that is related to our principals, vice principals, our school office staff, and anything related to the administrative function of the schools in terms of that funding allocation. We saw a $600,000 decrease in special education allocation, and then we saw a $2.2 million decrease in our teacher qualification and experience adjustment. And this sort of deals with, we're funded at a certain rate, an average rate for a teacher. And this basically, the ministry is equalizing our revenue depending on our current staff complement of what their experience level is and what their qualifications are. So some teachers will make more, some teachers will make less, depending on where they fall on the qualification experience grid. So we saw a reduction there. We also saw $800,000 reduction in school operations. Now you might be wondering, well, how did we get to that 3 million? So offsetting those decreases in our revenue, we saw an increase of 1.5 million when it comes to our minor tangible capital assets. So we have a portion of our funding allocated to minor tangible capital assets. So these are small capital assets that schools typically would purchase throughout the year for their students. We can allocate those costs to operating. So this is the one area with capital that you do have the latitude to allocate to operating, which we've elected to do this year. So we brought in an additional 1.5 million related to that. We also, if you recall, last meeting when I presented the financial results, we have deferred revenue. So we had more deferred revenue at year end than we thought we were going to have as of our budget estimates in June. And so we were allowed to use that deferred revenue this year to continue with those programs. And so we brought that in to offset some of these changes to the GSN funding. Some of the other areas of revenue that have changed. So we have seen an increase in our tuition fees from what we budgeted in June to our revised estimates now to the tune of 600,000. And the other increase is due to rentals. We are projecting an increase in rental revenue from our school facilities, including our fields and turfs. So we've adjusted our revenue for that with to the tune of 351,000. And then we've done a slight deduction in our secondments and miscellaneous revenue. That's largely driven due to fewer secondments currently of our staff to other entities throughout the year, which is a cost recovery model for those of you who are new. So we don't profit from it. We don't lose money by seconding our staff out to various organizations. And we are projecting an increase in capital assets. So you'll see that reflected in the corresponding increase in deferred capital contributions. Again, if you recall from last meeting, the deferred capital contributions were bringing in revenue to mirror the amortization of our capital assets that we've been funded for by the ministry. And then we have an increase of 100,000 in our Government of Canada. Again, that was a carry forward of deferred revenue from year end that we're planning to use in our 2022-2023 school year. Looking at expenses, so our expenses from our original budget in June to our revised budget now in December have increased 4.3 million. The main driver of this increase in expenses is in instruction costs, and you can see here on this slide that the increase for classroom instruction costs is $6.9 million. This $6.9 million has been offset by some decreases, or partially offset by some decreases in some of our other areas of expense, which are also highlighted here. So in terms of the secondments, that's the recoverable expenses line. So I spoke to the decrease in revenue. Here's the corresponding decrease in expenses there of 252,000. Our school support services. So again, that's our school administration expenses for our schools. That's a decrease of 463,000. Looking at our non-classroom expenses, so our board administration costs, we're seeing a reduction of almost 500,000. This is largely due to some of the new initiatives and program enhances that we proposed at June that we hadn't started yet. And so we're kind of postponing those until next year due to the decrease in enrollment and decrease in funding. We also have a decrease in transportation costs, primarily in the to and from school for elementary and secondary. From our school operations, we've seen an $800,000 decrease in our school operation costs this year. And that's largely due to a reallocation of contractual costs to staffing complement costs when it comes to custodial staff, and then a decrease in our insurance costs for this year that have come to light subsequent to our original estimates in June. And then finally, the last sort of section there is our other expenses have decreased roughly 500,000. This is just a reallocation. At June, we had the revised rates for CPP and EI put in other expenses. We've now moved that up into the benefits categories across the various salary and benefit sections of our budget. So that's that decrease. It's really just a reallocation. And then similar to the increase in deferred capital contributions that you saw on the revenue side, there's an increase in amortization expense there of almost 300,000. So the net of all those changes from the expense side is the $4.3 million. So this slide just outlines what we originally proposed in June, our total revenue and our total expenses compared to our revised estimates, total revenue and total expenses. And so it's a decrease of 3.9 million overall in our annual surplus deficit. And this is again from a public sector accounting perspective. And so now I just want to kind of go into the compliance piece, because this is will be new to some of you, and it gets a bit tricky in terms of what the ministry looks at for school boards in terms of whether our budget is compliant or not non-compliant. And so when we think about a balanced budget, essentially that's our revenues match our expenses, so there's no surplus or deficit. When we're talking about compliance for the Ministry of Education purposes, they have a formula that's outlined in the regulations that speaks to the items that they count towards revenue or items that they exclude from revenue when it comes to, are we compliant with our operating budget? And then they also factor in some items when it comes to our expenses. So there are two adjustments that they require us to include as expenses that aren't in line with public sector accounting standards. And then there are some exclusions that they also take out of our expenses when it comes to their compliance calculation. And it's highlighted there in the green box what those are, but I'll walk you through it in the next slide. When it comes to the regulation, we're allowed to have the lesser of these two items. So first is 1%. So the 1% of the board's operating allocation. And the second item is the board's accumulated surplus from the previous year. So if we don't have an accumulated surplus, we're not allowed to go into a deficit from the Ministry of Education's perspective. If we do have a surplus, we can go up to the 1% of our operations allocation. Since we do have an accumulated surplus, we're in the 1% category. So this is the calculation when it comes to compliance for the Ministry of Education purposes. So from a revenue perspective, they take our public sector accounting standard total revenue of 468 million. They deduct our school generated funds in this case for our 2022-2023 budget year, that's $9 million. They also remove our education development charges. That was $10 million for our 2022-2023 budget to give us a compliance revenue value of $449 million. Similarly, when it comes to expenses, they take our original expenses of 462 million. They add back those two costs that I spoke about, amortization of employee future benefits and interest accrued on capital debt. They then deduct the school generated fund expenses. So again, in our case, that's $9 million. They also, new in the last couple of years, have deducted these two other items, one related to capital projects and the other related to sinking fund interest. So essentially, there are certain capital projects that we entered into where the board's funding those projects through our accumulated surplus, and they've taken those out of their calculation for compliance purposes, because otherwise, if they didn't, we'd basically be double penalized for incurring those costs. So they've gone ahead and taken those out of the equation. So once all those adjustments have been done, we have total expenses of $453 million. And the difference there is the $3.9 million for compliance purposes. Looking at our accumulated surplus, so because we are in a deficit for compliance purposes of $3.9 million, we're looking to allocate that deficit across some of our internally restricted reserves, as well as our unrestricted accumulated surplus. So in this slide, we've highlighted the proposed changes and what the ending or projected ending reserve balances will be at the end of the 2022-2023 school year. And these changes have been outlined in the third resolution that you'll be voting on tonight. This slide just gives some historical context to sort of where our accumulated surplus or internally restricted reserves have trended the last few years. So in 2019-20, we were at 39.1. That increased to 42.7 in 2021. And then last year, as we presented at the last board meeting, we saw a decrease to 35.5 based on the $6.7 million deficit. And now we're projecting another 3.9, which will bring our internally restricted reserves down to 31.6 million at the end of 22-23 school year. This is just an excerpt from our compliance report. It's also been included as part of the report to the board in your agenda package. Here it highlights our compliance from admin and gov perspective. So there are some restrictions on how much boards can spend when it comes to administrative and governance costs. But we are happy to report that we are compliant with that. And this shows our in-year surplus deficit for compliance purposes being that 3.9 million that I spoke to. And then our 1% that we were allowed or eligible to go up to is right there in the middle on line 1.6. And that's just over $4 million for the year. So again, we are compliant within the 1%. So that's it for the presentation. Happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Senior Manager Cross. Thank you, Superintendent Lofts. I shall now, there are three parts to this. There are three motions, but I think we can take all the questions at this point in time and then take one by one all the motions. So trustees, at this point in time, do we have questions for staff? No questions?
I have a question.
Okay. Trustee Carabella, you have your hand up. You have hand up. I'll give it to you.
Thank you.
And Trustee Kennedy, could you start using the hand up option, please?
So thank you, Mr. Chair. My question is for that third resolution, when I add up the figures there, resolve the Halton Catholic District School Board approve the use of reserves as follows. When you add that all up, actually, what does it add up to? Because I just think it. What's the final number?
Does Superintendent Loft have those numbers? So you want to quickly add them up?
Through you, Mr. Chair, it should be roughly 3.9 million.
3.9,
Yeah.
okay. So, so my question is for that. So what are our reserves at right now and what will they be at when we take that out? Thank you.
Senior Manager Cross.
Yeah, through you, Mr. Chair. So I just put the slide back up on the presentation. So sorry, it's probably
I just have a point of privilege maybe. Can that be somehow blown up? Because it's very hard to see, even on my computer right in front of me.
It's behind you, Trustee Carabella. So when Trustee Carabella called a point of privilege, your point of privilege is that you cannot participate in the discussion. So yes, well accepted.
Yeah. So when we look at this slide, from our internally restricted and our unrestricted reserves that we have as of our fiscal year end 2021-22, so the third column from the right, kind of in the middle of this slide, we had $35.5 million available for compliance purposes. So if we needed to use our savings to cover a deficit, this is the amount that the ministry has established that we have kind of control over, that we can choose to cover that cost with. There's two main components to that. One being our operating reserve, which is at year end $7.9 million. So it's the third number kind of down in that middle column. And then the next one below it, which is our capital reserve of $8.8 million. And then the one that you have to be a little bit careful of is the committed capital projects piece. So while it's available, these are projects that we've already committed to incurring costs on. So it's kind of spoken for, and we don't, it's not advisable to really touch that now that we've kind of worked down the process for that one. So the two main ones are that operating reserve and that capital reserve. And you can kind of see based on the revised estimates adjustments there in that second to last column that we're primarily taking this deficit out of our operating reserve, which will reduce it from that 7.9 million to just under $5 million.
Thank you. Trustee Carabella, you have a follow-up? And thank you through Mr. Chair. Was there another, are there other options to where to get money from, or have we tried different things instead of going to the reserves?
Superintendent Lofts.
Thank you through you, Mr. Chair. And to you, Trustee Carabella, yes, we definitely have worked tremendously to get us to this point. There's been a couple of additional pressures that we have. As Adam spoke to earlier, there was a significant drop in revenue, right, as a result of the enrollment. But we also have been looking at some of our sick leave costs, with those going up. So we did add additional revenue, or not revenue, but additional budget to that in anticipation for a change in our sick leave based on how we're funded. So yeah, we worked with all, that's why I was kind of thanking everybody this time. It was literally a board effort to get us down to this point.
Thank you. Trustee Carabella, if you have more questions, you can go in line. Yeah. Trustee Kennedy, your hand is up. You have the floor.
Thank you. Just wondering where legal expenses are in the estimates. Where would that be other? Where would that be?
Senior Manager Cross.
Yes, so it won't show up in the presentation that I've done as a separate line. But if you look in the package that we've provided to the trustees as part of the agenda, we do have lines on the different departmental tabs that speak to fees and contract services. So if you were looking at, for example, our instruction expenses, you can see in the various subcategories, there might be fees and contract services. And so that's typically where our legal fees will show up. The lion's share of our legal fees will be in our admin and governance section. So when you look at our admin and governance slide or page, which is appendix A5 on in the board report that's in your agenda, I think it's page 66 of the agenda. You can see there's fees and contract services in there for this, but it's not all legal fees. So there are other contract service, like other contract services in that category, but that's where legal fees will show up.
Thank you. Trustee Kennedy, you have a follow-up? Yeah, go ahead.
Tuition fees, are they just front loaded? Is that why we've already received 99.6% of them?
Through you, Mr. Chair. So typically we collect our tuition in advance of the visa students starting with the school board. Counting rules require us to defer that revenue until they start classes, at which point we bring in the revenue. We do often, on occasion, have to refund certain students, but we take in the revenue as soon as school starts in September.
Thank you. You have a clarification question or new question?
New question.
Then I'll put you back in the list. Okay. Trustee Saunders, you have your hand up.
Yeah, just a quick question. So if next year we run into some issues and our operating reserves go down to zero or negative, what are the implications? Like, do we start violating that 1% issue? And if we do, what happens then?
I'll pass this to Superintendent Lords. Yeah.
Through you, Mr. Chair. So part of the requirement that Adam spoke to earlier with respect to a compliant budget or having a deficit budget was that you do have reserves.
Right.
So the 1% wouldn't apply if we don't have reserves in place.
Right.
So we do have still some reserves. Obviously, this year we're going to be addressing, we've made some internal changes going forward with respect to the budgeting. As we mentioned, enrollment has been going down the last number of years, or last couple of years at least. So it's something now to kind of really adjust what our enrollment projections are based on that. And we kind of look at it a little later in our, not so much in this presentation, but in the agenda where we're putting out our 5-year or 4-year projections. So it has been looking at the actual enrollment side as well as in obviously the expense side as well.
Thank you.
Mr. Chair, sorry, yes, Superintendent Law. So if we have like another 3.9 or 4 and these reserves go down to zero, operating reserves, it seems to me we start running into a bunch of problems in terms of the 1% and the reserves. And I'm just wondering what happens then? Do we're now offside and what are the implications?
Superintendent Lords?
Well, through you, Mr. Chair, the implications would be we would need to discuss that with the ministry and we would be put on a plan to get us back on side. Yeah.
Okay. I just have one more question.
Yes,
Mr. Chair.
I'll come back to you. You have 2 questions. I'll come back to you. Your name is up there.
Okay.
So let me go to Trustee Owen. Janada has not spoken. Then I'll come back to you.
Thank you. Through you, Mr. Chair. Mr. Chair, I guess my question is when we're creating these budget estimates, the landscape in every private and education have changed, right? There's no historical data through a pandemic to plan a budget. So I would just like to find out, are we changing anything moving forward when we're creating our estimate?
Superintendent Lofts.
Thank you. Through you, Mr. Chair. Yes, we are, Trustee Sornota. We're changing the way that we We look at certain elements with respect to our expenditures, especially. We're also, so there's two parts of the expense side and the revenue side. So the revenue side, we're looking at the enrollment side of it. And then on the expense side, we're looking at different ways in how we process things internally. We've also discussed, I know we've seen in the past, where we bring in new initiatives, program enhancements. I think going forward, we're discussing changing this when we bring that forward to board. So that might be a timing difference as well to kind of bring it once we get a better idea of what our actual numbers are.
Thank you, Trustee Ohonchandra. You have a follow-up?
Perfect. So sorry, just changing the paradigm of how we think about estimating our budget at an education level, right?
I think we have to, it's a paradigm shift for our board
Awesome.
right now.
Thank you.
Thank you. I'll go back to Trustee Kennedy. Trustee Kennedy, you have a floor.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Under trustees benefits, I know it's not a lot, 8,300. What are those benefits?
I'll pass that to.
And also other expenses,
City Manager
50,000 for trustees. So they're both under the same. Yeah, A5 appendix.
Through you, Mr. Chair. So the benefits are CPP and EHT for trustees. And in terms of the other expenses, there's a few items that make up that balance. Primarily being different initiatives that are happening at the time, as well as some of the things that have been implemented, like having a parliamentarian. Those costs are included in other expenses.
Thank you, Trustee Kennedy. Follow up.
How do we have negative trustee expenses so far? Did we get a refund on something?
Through you, Mr. Chair. So that's just the timing of accruals when we've reversed them versus when we process the actual expense.
Thank you. I'll go down to Trustee Saunders.
Sorry, just could you describe to me the committed sinking fund interest? What, through you, Mr. Chair, Superintendent Loss, what exactly is that again? How does it work?
Could you repeat the question? I didn't hear.
Oh, sorry, just asking Superintendent Loss, the committed sinking fund interest. Could you sort of describe what that is and what's happening here?
Yes, thank you. And through you, Mr. Chair, that's a historical cost from prior debt that we've had in the past number of years, long before. It's been a number of years. It's actually very similar to, and Adam pointed out before, and it's actually fortunate now, where it actually no longer punishes, maybe the wrong word to use, but impacts the board negatively with respect to our 1% compliance. It's allowed now to be excluded from that calculation. I think you had it up on the slide before, Adam.
Thank you. Trustee Saunders, go ahead.
So, and this is, we like accruing, are we amortizing this interest into the?
It's an older debt that we've had on our books, and we get accrue it down over a course of whatever, I don't know, number of years we have left.
Thank you.
Thank you. Trustees, do we have any more questions for Senior Manager Cross as well? Trustee Kennedy, go ahead. Sorry.
I just have to scroll back up through to find where the page was. Interest revenue, 500, through you, Mr. Chair, interest revenue, 500,000. Pretty flat number. What are we invested in? Is it just straight cash instruments, money market? Are they bonds? And eventually is it possible to see what our limitations are and what we can buy and what we can't buy versus like credit quality and things of that nature?
Thank you. I'll pass this to Superintendent Lopes.
Yes, thank you, through you, Mr. Chair. There's a couple parts to that question, Trustee Kennedy. First part, maybe I'll just address what we can invest in. So we're very limited through the EDAC what we can invest in. So essentially it's GICs and bank interest is what we can't do. We can't do bonds, things like derivatives, things like that. We can't, and they have to be Schedule 1 banks, and they've actually extended it now a little bit more now to not just Schedule 1, but it's pretty regimented as to what we can invest in. The 500,000, and maybe I'll mention this a little bit. It used to be, you might be imagining with the rising interest rates, why we aren't seeing a bigger return on that funding or on our balance, especially when you look at our reserves are pretty healthy. They're 31 million or so. The ministry implemented a number, or not that many years ago, I guess 2018 or so, deferred grant payments. So that revenue no longer sits on our books, or that reserve doesn't sit on our books. The ministry has a receivable to us, so we can't earn interest on that 31 million. So we're very limited now to our cash balances as to what we can achieve interest revenue from.
Thank you. Trustee Kennedy, do you have any further questions?
I mean, GICs and bank interests are great this year.
Yeah,
I mean, you
it's
can't
true, yes.
complain any
No,
bonds are
it's-
negative. Like you're
Yeah,
doing great. So we have, we were already above 25% in the first 3 months. So I would expect that to probably go a little higher. Yeah.
I would hope so.
School generated funds, last question. So 9 million estimate, 9 million revised. We're already at like 3.7 million, which looks remarkable. Is it because we moved previous year forward? We're at 41% and only 25% of the way through the year. Do you expect that number to exceed the 9 million? Or is it just front? Or like,
Superintendent Love?
Thank you. Through Mr. Chair and to you, Trustee Kennedy. To be perfectly honest, we just make them equal. We make our revenue equal our expense because we don't really, when Adam had that, or sorry, Senior Manager Cross had, we can't exclude that as part of our, see, does Adam have it up there? Oh, there it is, 9 million. So you can see how we exclude it. We less out from our annual surplus calculation. So we can't include that 9 million. It's not revenue to the board. So it's not our revenue. We have to earmark it specifically for the schools. So from a board perspective, from doing this approval process, it could be $2 and it wouldn't really change our 33.9 million, or it'd be $100 million. Similarly, it wouldn't change our 3.9 million deficit for compliance.
but the overall number, like we're at 41, like is it because we had generated funds that came in from last year, or are the schools just doing a great job of raising revenue this year?
Thank you, through you, Mr. Chair, and to you, Trustee Kennedy. A little of both. Like we haven't rolled forward those numbers, so those are current year numbers. So that $9 million, it's not a roll forward. And we have the Schedule 5. We can show what we started with, and then we start with about 2 point. Was it 2.4?
I don't have.
You don't have that slide? Okay. So I'm just going off memory, Trustee Kennedy, but I think we had an opening balance of about either 2.4 or 2.8 for SGF, for school generated funds for this year. And then that 9 million would add to it. And obviously we would reduce it by the amount of what the schools spend this year. So ideally they would spend all that $9 million this year and then some with that additional.
Through you, Mr. Chair, just to add to what Superintendent Loss is saying, we did look at an average, but because we've had a couple of years where we've seen lower school generated funds, our average, so what we model for projecting what we might land on, is kind of still lower than where we were at our peak. We were just under $8 million last year for school generated funds. The 41% can be a little misleading, just depending on when schools do their major revenue drives. So a lot of schools have that fall push where they either have dance-a-thons or things that they generate a large share of their revenue. And then you typically see something again in the spring. So you might see this period where there's a big peak, and then you'll see months where there's not a lot of fundraising done, and then another spike kind of later. So obviously we'd love for our school community to continue to contribute to our schools. We're very fortunate that we're able to generate the funds that we can, and that's a testament to our families and our schools for their creativity in terms of their fundraising initiatives. But yeah, it's kind of the combination of the two, where we've sort of looked at what our trend has been, bumping it up this year, hopeful that we'll build off that 8 million that we had in actual funds realized last year for another $1 million this year. But at the end of the day, there's a net impact when it comes to our budget, because we just mirror the expenses to match the revenue.
Thank you. I see no other hands up. Have your hands up.
Last one.
Got to be up.
Sorry, just for my knowledge, I didn't take it down. EDC revenue. What is EDC? I just don't.
Passes Superintendent Law.
Thank you, through you,
It's
Mr.
your
Chair.
favorite topic. Yeah.
Yep, through you, Mr. Chair, to Trustee Kennedy. EDC revenue is education development charges. So it's from all the properties we buy and such with respect to our new schools. We then can collect that theoretically over a 15-year period from all the housing starts, from the when you go and open up a permit for a new build and such. We receive education development charges, typically from the northern area. Obviously, with Milton being a growth area and such, we receive a significant amount. Again, it's something that it doesn't really impact our budget in the sense that we can't use that revenue to offset any kind of deficit we could have. That revenue is essentially already been spoken for. It's for when we bought our land to kind of pay back that cost to our land.
Thank you. So I see no other hands up. I have just one question, Senior Manager Cross. If you go to the last page, the compliance page, and it says for further compliance, required further compliance 1.4. 1.4. What's that supposed to be? Requires further compliance.
Yeah, through you, Mr. Chair. Basically, that's that calculation that I walked you through on one of the other slides, where they've taken the education development charges revenue out, they've taken our school generated funds revenue out, and then they've also taken our our school generated fund expenses out of our expenses, and kind of compared what our revenue and expenses would be. So when you look here, I know it's kind of small, but the total revenue for compliance purposes, we go from 468 million down to 449 million. And then our total expenses, while they reduced from 462 million to 453 million, our revenues went down 19 million and our expenses only were adjusted for 9.1 million or 9.9 million, sorry. So then we end up with that deficit for compliance purposes of 3.9.
Thank you. And question to Superintendent, what's the next steps now? We vote on this and then what happens? So for the information of trustees.
Yep, certainly, thank you. And through you, Mr. Chair, to everyone. So right now, we actually received an extension from the ministry with respect to the filing of our EFS estimates. We have it extended to the end of this week, till December 23rd. Typically, they're due to the 15th of the month. We had board today, so we've let the ministry know that if we receive, and if we hopefully receive board approval, then we will file directly with the ministry and submit these revised estimates.
Thank you. Thank you, Superintendent Loft. Thank you, Senior Manager Cross and your team. We don't see them, but they do a fantastic job behind the scenes. And we just see you all here, so say thank you to everybody, okay? With that, we'll continue with the motion and we'll take all three motions and we'll vote on them. So I will read the first motion. Resolved that the Halton Catholic District School Board approve the 2022-23 salary and benefits revised budget estimates in the amount of $366,812,258. May I have a mover for this item? Moved by Trustee Saunders. Looking for a seconder, please.
I can second it.
Trustee Agnew. We had the discussion, so I will call the vote on this item. Trustee Carabella, how do you vote on this?
Opposed.
Trustee Powell?
You come back to me.
Sure. Trustee Kennedy?
Sorry, please come back to me as well.
Trustee Ohanchanara?
In favor?
Vice Chair Agnew?
In favor?
Trustee Murphy?
In favor.
Trustee Saunders?
Favor.
Trustee Kelly?
In favor.
Trustee Bowie?
In favor.
Trustee Chua?
In favor.
Trustee Kuzma?
In favor.
Oh, Trustee Carabella? Oh, sorry. Trustee Powell?
In favor.
And Trustee Kennedy?
In favor.
We have 7 in favor, 1 opposed, no abstention. Motion carries. We shall now go to the next part of the motion. Resolved that the Halton Catholic District School Board approve the 2022-23 revised budget estimates, excluding salary and benefits, in the amount of $95,608,995. May I have a mover for this item, please?
I'll move it.
Moved by Trustee Ohanchanara. Looking for a seconder, Trustee Saunders. We had a discussion on this, so I'll take it to a recorded vote. Trustee Powell?
In favor.
Trustee Kennedy?
In favor.
Trustee Ohanchanara?
In favor?
Vice Chair Agnew?
In favor?
Trustee Murphy?
In favor.
Trustee Saunders?
Favor.
Trustee Kelly?
In favor.
Trustee Bowie?
In favor.
Trustee Chua?
In favor.
Trustee Kuzma?
In favor.
Trustee Carabella?
I'm opposed.
We have 7 in favor, 1 opposed, no abstention, motion carries. We shall now go on to the third part of this motion. I will read the motion. Resolved that the Halton Catholic District School Board approve the use of reserves as follows: $290,116 unallocated operating surplus, $3,193,990 operating reserves, $485,296 decrease in committed capital project reserves, $69,400 increase to capital reserves. May I have a mover for this item?
Trustee Agnew.
Moved by Trustee Agnew. Looking for a seconder, please. Trustee Saunders. We won't have a discussion because we talked about this. I shall now call the vote on this item. Trustee Kennedy.
Approved.
Sorry. Trustee Uhanchanara.
In favor.
Vice Chair Agnew.
In favor.
Trustee Murphy.
In favor.
Trustee Saunders.
In favor.
Trustee Kelly.
In favor.
Trustee Bowie.
In favor.
Trustee Chua.
In favor.
Trustee Kuzma.
In favor.
Trustee Carabella.
I'm opposed.
Trustee Powell.
In favor.
We have 7 in favor, 1 opposed, no abstention. Motion carries. We shall now move on to the next item, policy II-26, student trustees on the Halton Catholic District School Board. Trustee Ohan Chanara, could you please read the motion?
Good, I just need it up on the screen. I don't have it on my screen, I'm sorry. Point of privilege. Oh, here comes parliamentarian activity. Thank you. Is it me? It's Taylor Swift's thing? Be resolved that the Halton Catholic District School Board accept the recommendation of the policy committee that policy I-26, student trustees on the Halton Catholic District School Board, be approved as amended.
Thank you, Trustee Ohan Chanara. I will hand the gavel to Vice Chair Agnew because I would like to participate in this. So handing it over.
Okay, so Trustee O'Hearns Renata has moved this motion. This policy has come to the board from the policy committee and does not need a seconder. So we will start a list for discussion on this particular motion. I see right now on the list, Trustee Chua.
Thank you so much, Madam Chair. I'd just like to say that for all trustees here at our last policy meeting, if you would kindly please refer to our informal report that the student trustees put together to really gouge out the student voice and perspective of amending this motion, amending this policy, sorry. Yeah.
Sorry, Trustee Chua, I'm so sorry. Would you be able to repeat what you just said? I'm so
Apologies,
sorry,
sorry.
I missed it. I
All I
apologize.
was saying is the student trustees compiled last time at policy meeting an informal report for all the trustees here to gouge the raw student voice up from each of our regions from the student senate. So I kindly ask all of you to refer back to that so you can see what our students are thinking about this.
Thank you so much, Trustee Chua. On the list, I've got Trustee Dewar. Trustee Dewar, you've got the floor.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So we have this policy in front of us, and I'd like to propose an amendment to this, which is a strike and replace. I've sent the wording to Ms. Swindon, and this is I'm presenting new information which has come to my attention. We did. So this is the bullet we added at last policy meeting, Madam Chair, and I'm proposing that we strike this out and replace it with the highlighted item below. I move it, looking for a second.
Yeah, for sure. Does anyone want to second that? I'll second it. Okay, Trustee O'Hearn-Jornata, thank you. Trustee Jordan, would you like to speak to that?
Sure. Madam Chair, I'd like to present this as new information. As I said, at the last policy meeting, we added this paragraph and we had some discussion. So I took some time to look at this and reflect on this, and some parts of the paragraph did not make sense. One part referenced what is already enshrined in the Constitution, and another part gave the Board of Trustees control over student trustees elections, which does not really sit right with me. So implementation of this particular paragraph is kind of a problem. So it's not necessary to specifically identify the funding because it's already enshrined in the Constitution and the Education Act, as well as in case law. Also, it's always an issue to ask someone to commit to something that is unknown. So I would not include the last words of that the previous striked out, like and such other measures of the Board of Trustees from time to time. Therefore, in order to make this robust and acceptable to all involved with this implementation, I'm proposing this, Madam Chair.
Thank you very much, Trustee Jort. So I have, I'll start a speakers list with respect to this particular amendment. So I do see some hands up, so I'm just going to ask if it's with respect to the amendment that's been proposed or if it's with respect to the main motion. So Trustee Kennedy, I do see your hand up. Is it for this amendment or for the main motion?
Main motion.
Okay, perfect. Thank you. Trustee Bowie, amendment? Okay, go ahead. You got the floor.
Thank you, through you, Madam Chair. So we as student trustees consulted on this amendment here, and I just wanted to provide a little bit of perspective as to some of the changes that we supported. One of the key issues that we took with the original wording is that last sentence there, and of other such measures of the Board of Trustees from time to time deems necessary. So under that wording, essentially student trustees are held accountable to what the Board of Trustees deems is in line with Catholic education, and for any other trustee, it would be unreasonable to expect them to be held accountable and their role to be held accountable to the other trustees at the table, right? We don't expect adult trustees to be able to remove other trustees from office for violating their oath. We as student trustees are accountable to the code of conduct, as are any other municipal trustees. So we are upholding the mission, vision, and values of the Halton Catholic District School Board. We're upholding denominational rights, but we are not upholding the whims of the Board of Trustees because we are independent and accountable to our constituents themselves. So that was one of the main changes that we proposed. So we as student trustees are satisfied with this amendment. And I just wanted to provide a little bit of perspective there.
Thank you very much, Trustee Bowie. Next, I have Trustee O'Hearn-Jornata. Was that with respect to the amendment, Trustee O'Hearn-Jornata?
It is, Madam Chair.
Go ahead, you've got the floor.
Thank you. I was just wondering, at the policy meeting, we had some discussions about the additional paragraphs and we had some comments from legal. Do we have legal with us this evening?
So we do. We have Ms. Timochenko on the line. Sorry, I should have announced that earlier.
Thank you.
Did you have a question then?
I did.
I
just wanted to defer to Ms. Timochenko in regards to, there was some gentle, I don't know, gentle warnings about the other paragraphs that we had. With this amendment, do we feel more confident that it removes any liability we could potentially putting the board in?
Thank you. Through you, Madam Vice Chair. I don't think it removes all liability. What I do think it does, though, is very clearly articulate what the expectation is of your student trustees. And I think it's consistent with what you would be asking elected trustees as well. So in that way, I think that this revised language is helpful. And it's very clear what the expectation is, whereas I would agree with the chair's comment that, and the student trustees comment that, and of such other measures, that's an unknown. And it's very hard to ask somebody to sign an oath that they'll follow whatever somebody says when they don't know what that might be.
Trustee O'Hearn-Jornata, did you have a follow-up?
No, perfect. Thank you.
Okay. Before I take a vote, Trustee Dewart, you have a chance to close.
Madam Chair, thank you for the opportunity to close. There's nothing much to say. I think we just said it. This language is very clear, concise, and gives clarity to whoever's reading this. Our student trustees should be happy with this, and I think it makes it robust and acceptable to all. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Okay, so again, just for clarity, we are going to take a vote on the amendment as you see on your screen. So I'm just going to go ahead and do that. So Trustee Carabella?
In favor.
Okay. Trustee Powell?
Opposed.
Okay. Trustee Kennedy?
In favor.
Trustee O'Hearn-Janota?
In favor.
Trustee Dewart?
In favor.
Trustee Kelly?
Abstain.
Okay. Trustee Saunders?
In favor.
Trustee Murphy?
In favor.
Okay. Trustee Kuzma?
In favor.
Okay. Trustee Bowie?
In favor.
Trustee Chua?
In favor.
Okay. And I'm in favor as well. So the amendment passes. So now we are going on to the main motion. So I have a speakers list here. So Trustee Candy, you had your hand up to speak to the main motion. You have the floor.
Just wondering if I can propose a friendly amendment or however to the requirements section where it says qualified student nominees will hold qualifications and endorsements as stated below. Just let you get that. I'll let you get the page first before I. Right there.
Okay, go ahead.
Sorry, a little bit higher. Right there. So where it says in the middle, it says a history of leadership interests is exhibited through work on the student senate, the student council, social justice groups, parish youth organizations, so forth. I'd like to propose an amendment to remove this. There may be some students who have never had any experience on these committees or groups, and they may all of a sudden decide they want to run. And if they have a voice, I think we should give them a chance, knowing they may not be voted in by their peers because they haven't been involved in these groups. But I just look at for us to run as trustees, Canadian citizen over 18 years of age and a Catholic. We had no subjective requirements to run to be a Catholic trustee, and I don't think we should have necessarily one for the students, and let them run if they want to run, and let them go through the process and let their peers decide whether they want them to represent them or not.
Thank you, Trustee.
In the
Kennedy.
spirit of, let's say, inclusiveness.
Thank you, Trustee Kennedy. Do I have a seconder for this?
I'll second it.
Trustee Saunders seconds it. Okay, so we're proposing this as a friendly amendment. Yeah, so let's go around the table and just let me know if you're in favor of this as a friendly amendment or not. Trustee Kelly? Sure. Trustee Saunders?
In favor.
Okay. Trustee Kuzma? We're just to see if it's a friendly, if we can take this as a friendly amendment. Opposed? Okay. Trustee Murphy? You're in favor? Okay. Trustee
No,
Dewar?
I'm opposed.
You're opposed? Okay, so it's already not a friendly amendment. So we will continue on. So we have, there was a seconder to this amendment, yeah. Trustee Saunders seconded it, yeah. So we will go ahead then. So we'll go ahead and have a conversation about this. So I've started another speakers list here. So Trustee Kuzma, go ahead. You're speaking to the amendment.
Thank you. And through you, Madam Chair, I just wanted to say that this bullet point saying that the student must have a history of leadership, it's not saying that it's an absolute requirement for getting in. If a student wants to apply and doesn't have experience, they can still apply, they can still put the package through. And depending on how, if there's more than one person at the school, when the school votes on who they want, so the principal in combination with student council, the students will see everything about the student, their goals, what they've done in the past, and they'll see everything. And it's not saying, oh, you can't run if you haven't done anything. It's just just removing it, it doesn't have a purpose because they can run whether they have that experience or not. So it's not really a requirement, I guess I'm trying to say. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Trustee Kuzma. Trustee Chua, you've got the floor.
Yep. So I do understand the heart of why we want to amend this motion, but I will say that having a history of leadership would be necessary for this type of position. I will say being a student trustee is probably one of the highest leadership positions that a student can gain at this board. And having no prior experience of amplifying student voice, of understanding what students want, may lead to some complications in the future. At least students having some sort of gauge of, how to lead students, how to amplify student voice, will lead our board up for success. So I am opposed to this amendment.
Thank you, Trustee Chua. Trustee Bowie.
Thank you. And I'll agree with my fellow student trustees on how necessary leadership interest is. One thing I will say is that from a procedural perspective, this outline here outlines who should be nominated at the school level to eventually run in the elections. And it is my belief that leadership should be something that the school nomination committee takes into consideration when nominating, because we have two steps of the election, right? You have to be nominated by your school and then you have to run in the election. So this speaks to the nomination part and the criteria that should be considered throughout that process. So there, I think it's valuable. And the second thing is that this policy, for those who may not know, is the only guideline that students have for what to include in their application package. We do not have a step-by-step guideline for students to fill out. We don't have a questionnaire and application process. This policy is the only thing that tells students what to include. So by having these bullet points here, it gives a little bit of a guideline in a procedural perspective for students what they should talk about, what they should be expecting to include in their application to be successful. So from a procedural perspective, personally, I don't think that the bullet makes that much of a difference. And I see where Trustee Saunders and Trustee Kennedy are coming from and putting it forward. But from a procedural perspective, it can be helpful to students in helping guide the process of their application.
Thank you, Trustee Bowie. Next, I've got Trustee Saunders. You've got the floor.
Yeah, actually it says qualified nominees will hold qualification endorsements as stated below. It doesn't look optional to me. It looks like this is what they need. And I think that I agree with Trustee Kennedy that I think what we'll do is excluding people that may not be part of this club or this group of people that would normally be able to apply. So I think it opens the door. And also, if you want to think of it in terms of marginalized students, I don't think they would not necessarily be involved in some of these things. So I think it opens the door to many, many more students. So I will support this.
Thank you, Trustee Saunders. Next, I've got Trustee O'Hearn-Gironota.
Thank you. Through you, Madam Chair. So I guess I'm looking at it in a different way, and through you, Madam Chair, to maybe our superintendent, Mr. DeSoto, in regards to, if we remove this paragraph, I'm thinking of the students and setting them up for success. I've never been a student trustee, so having those leadership qualities or the interest in the leadership qualities, if we take that away, are we not setting them up for success? My concern is by removing that, we're not utilizing their skills and abilities. Does that make any sense at all?
Trustee Del Sordo, are you comfortable to respond to that?
Trustee Del Sordo.
I'm sorry. Oh my gosh. I'm sorry. I just demoted you. I apologize, Superintendent Del Sordo.
I'm in the wrong table.
I apologize profusely. Please, Superintendent Del Sordo.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and through you, Madam Chair, to you, Trustee O'Hearn-Gironota. I mean, I understand Trustee Kennedy's point in terms of how to make this inclusive so anyone without any proven leadership could apply. But then I also understand Trustee Bowie's point that when you are applying, students only have this document to really organize their leadership. And so the idea of having a history of leadership is really might be the point. I think if you want to think about just having that, a history of leadership, so that lets the student enter that question and therefore add what they have done to show proven leadership, and there be voted might be a suggestion moving forward.
Trustee O'Hearn-Gironota, did you have a follow-up?
Just a follow-up, just a comment, because leadership in this bullet point could mean whatever the student feels exhibits their form of leadership, whatever that may be. Okay, no, thank you.
Okay, thank you. Trustee Carabella?
Thank you, Madam Chair. So another way, maybe I understand like having a list of suggestions, if that's the only thing the trustees look at, or candidates. Maybe another way to phrase it would be to leave those things and put at the end is helpful but not mandatory. So a history of leadership, interest, and exhibited through these things is helpful but not mandatory. That might also be another way to phrase a history of leadership. Give students, maybe a student in grade 9 aspires to be a student trustee in grade 10 or 11, and we'll look at this list and get some ideas of what to get involved in. It's another way of phrasing it, but leaving the ideas.
So Trustee Carabella, are you suggesting an amendment to this then?
If it's an idea, yes, if it's helpful, or if Trustee Kennedy, I don't know how to do it through the rules, but just, or if he'd like to comment.
Trustee Kennedy?
Yeah, I would just say, I mean, what about an example of newcomers to our country? We have a lot of people coming here who have no maybe experience in these groups.
So I'm just going to, sorry, just for sake of process, we just need to address whether so Trustee Carabella has made a suggestion as far as an amendment to what you brought forward. So is there consideration for that? Are you putting that putting that as a formal amendment? I just want to deal with that before we. Do you want to handle it?
I don't think I can like put it on as because he has done a strike out completely, so I'm not sure the process.
Chair Dewar, would you like to speak to that?
Can I just propose something?
Sure.
And again, speaking to Trustee Carabella's point, and Parliamentarian Kapoor has pointed out to me here, I'll not take your thunder. History of leadership interested as exhibited, for example, instead of saying, is that's acceptable to everybody? You could make a friendly amendment to that. For example.
Okay, so we're just going to go. So do we have that? Can we just put that so we can see it? Is that okay? Just for a moment, just so people can see what that would look like.
History of leadership, for example.
Okay.
Oh yeah, correct. Yes.
Okay. So would this be something that we could go around and see about a friendly amendment?
Well, I think you could still leave, for example, but in the spirit of what Trustee Kennedy was saying, for example, these things are helpful, but not mandatory.
So are you making this?
Okay, so I would make that added on if people would like to consider it as a friendly amendment.
Parliamentarian Kapoor. Yeah. Right.
Okay.
So how do you want to make a formal amendment then? It's not friendly. Would you like to make an amendment to the amendment?
I have a point of clarification.
Go ahead.
Can we go through, for example, as a friendly amendment and then address Trustee Carabella's suggestion as a separate friendly amendment?
Yep. So if everybody's in favor of that, so what Trustee Bowe is saying is, can we just take it step by step? So the first step would be a friendly amendment to add, for example, and then go from there. So would people be, so let me just go around and see if you would be amiable to that. Again, it's step by step. It's not saying the whole piece, but just starting with that, for example. Just one, sorry. Trustee Kennedy, just one moment. Trustee Carabella, would you be in favor of that?
Of adding that. It's helpful.
For example, just as a starting point.
Okay, yeah.
Okay. Trustee Chua? In favor. Trustee Powell? Okay, Trustee Kennedy?
Sorry, can you repeat? So for example.
So we're adding the words in, for example, and then the rest of that's coming there. So it's not saying you have to have these. It's saying these are examples of leadership opportunities that a student trustee would could possess.
That's fair.
But not required?
But we're just dealing with this right now as a for example. Yeah, and then someone can propose further.
Favor.
Okay. Trustee O'Hearn-Jarota, yep, you're good. Yes, okay, I'm okay with it. Trustee Bowie, Trustee Murphy, Trustee Saunders. It's a thumbs up, trustee Saunders? Okay, sorry, I couldn't see you behind trustee Kuzma. And trustee Kelly, thank you. Okay, so thank you for that. So we can begin with that. Okay. So trustee Carabella, on that, did you have additional wording that you were looking to put in as a friendly amendment?
Would be at the end of that paragraph, could be is helpful but not required.
Is that okay, so that's the wording you're looking to put?
I think that, well, I'd ask trustee Kennedy if he prefers the word required or mandatory. Would you prefer the word at the end to say is helpful but not required, or is helpful but not mandatory?
Okay. So you're putting this as a friendly amendment?
Yes.
Okay, so I need to go around and just see if we have support for that. So trustee Carabella, you're okay with this as a friendly amendment?
No, it's the word mandatory, but not mandatory.
Sorry, but not mandatory. Okay. Are you okay with that then?
Yes.
Trustee Chua?
Favor.
You're in favor of that change? Trustee Powell?
I'm in favor.
Okay, trustee Kennedy?
In favor.
Trustee Hearns-Renata? Of course I can. Trustee Duart? Trustee Bowie?
I have one objection, so opposed.
Okay. Trustee Murphy?
In favor.
Trustee Kuzma?
Abstain.
Okay, trustee Saunders?
In favor.
Trustee Kelly?
In favor.
Okay. Sorry, who's it coming back to? Sorry, trustee Hearns-Renata? Okay. Okay, so that passes as a friendly amendment. Let me just see where we are here. Okay. Well, no, we still had people that we're speaking to. Okay. Right. Is there anybody else that still wants to speak to the amendment? There's hands up for that. Okay. So trustee Bowie, you're have the floor.
Thank you. I hate to drag this out, but I feel like that is helpful but not mandatory is a little bit redundant, and because students have to, in their application, submit some kind of leadership interest. Now that can be as simple as being an older sibling or having family experience or work experience, whatever it may be. But I do believe that some kind of leadership is necessary for this role, and students are creative. We actually are the ones who appoint the senator applications. And, you know, I read about students who took care of their pets as an example of leadership. I read about students who, you know, took care of their siblings, who did other things around the house as an example of leadership. And I think that by saying leadership is helpful but not mandatory is a little bit redundant when we have the for example. I would encourage students to be creative in what type of leadership they're expressing through their application, but I don't think that necessarily we should say that leadership is not mandatory.
Thank you, trustee Bowie. Trustee Kuzma?
Thank you, and through you, Madam Chair, I would like to just basically affirm and build off of what Katie said, as really any sort of leadership experience is what we need, regardless of whether it's experience on student council or experience just dealing with a sibling. It's if a student wants to be a student trustee, regardless of whether they've done anything in their school, they should be able to put down that they have some sort of leadership experience in some sort of way. And I think just having the text as not mandatory defeats the whole purpose of having the applications, as if leadership's not mandatory, then anyone can be it. And I think for a role as important and as difficult and tough as this, I don't think that anyone can be in this position.
Thank you, trustee Kuzma. Trustee Carabella, do you mind just hitting your microphone off? Oh, sorry, that's okay. I just want to remove the echo. Trustee Kennedy, you will have, I don't see anybody else in there, so we can go ahead and close off the amendment if you want to. Oh, I'm sorry, I don't see it there. Sorry. One moment. Do you mind holding for a second? I'll let trustee. Okay, go ahead, trustee Duart.
Madam Chair, I just wanted to say that there's a difference between an elected trustee, adult, and a student trustee. And there's a very clear distinction in the Education Act. There's a very clear distinction in our bylaws. That's why we have a separate policy on this for student trustees. And I do agree with Trustee Bowie that you need to exhibit your leadership skills, and we want the best of the student trustees to represent at the table here. So that requirement, I think, is a good one. Thinking about the word not mandatory, but that's my 2 cents.
Thank you, Trustee Duart. So Trustee Kennedy, you have an opportunity to close this amendment.
Yeah, I think you should exhibit your leadership skills, but you can do that during when you're running. Maybe we have students who are new to the country, haven't been on these committees. Maybe they've been introverts all through high school and all of a sudden have a change of heart. We're including the policies changing to include non-Catholic students. So I think we should use this as an opportunity to include all students and let their peers decide, do they want them to represent them or not? Achieving believing belonging, that's what I think we should be doing here.
Thank you, Trustee Kennedy. Can I just ask if everyone, if you're intending to speak to the main motion, you can leave your hand up. If you're not, can you just please take your hand down so I can keep track? That's okay. Thank you so much. Okay, so we are going to go ahead and take this amendment, correct, to a vote? Right. Yeah, for sure. Okay, so we are going to go ahead and take this amendment to a vote. A second. Okay, Trustee Carabella?
In favor.
Trustee Powell?
In favor.
Trustee Kennedy?
In favor.
Trustee O'Hearn-Zernota?
Opposed.
Okay. Trustee Duart?
In favor.
Okay. Trustee Murphy? Correct.
In favor.
Trustee Saunders?
In favor.
Trustee Kelly?
Opposed.
Trustee Kuzma?
Opposed.
Trustee Bowie?
Opposed.
And Trustee Chua?
Opposed.
Okay, so the amendment passes. So now we're going back to the main motion. Do I have any hands up to speak to the main motion? No, good. We're ready to take it to a vote. Okay. Oh, Trustee Carabella.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So I was sorry to see the outcome of the court case against your Catholic District School Board, and sorry to see that not appealed. I agree with the amendments added to underline the Catholic character and aspect expected of all student trustees going forward. I wanted to thank the student trustee report that includes the Senate Student Voice Survey on this matter. And I'm going to represent the voice of those students. There were some who voted not to support non-Catholic students running for Catholic position of Catholic School Board trustee. And then to represent the stakeholders who also reached out to me who are opposed to allowing non-Catholics as student trustees in a Catholic school system. So I will not be supporting the policy, but I am glad that the Catholic character was increased and underlined. Thank you.
Thank you, Trustee Carabella. Trustee Chua, you've got your hand up.
Again, I want to emphasize this: as student trustees, we're representatives of our board. And in our secondary school sector, not all of us are Catholic, and there is a gap between Catholic students and non-Catholic students in our school every single day. As Catholic student trustees, so all of us here, Trustee Bowie, Trustee Kuzma, and I, our job is to uplift the voices of students, yet we are unable to understand the true biases and barriers that they face every single day as we are Catholics. Yes, we can amplify it, but we cannot accurately amplify it because we are Catholic students. And allowing non-Catholic students to run for student trustee will just amplify the voices of our students accurately of what we have in our board. So the student trustees will be voting in favor for this policy amendment because we firmly believe that student voice is the #1 thing that we should be running on. And this policy will allow all students to amplify the voices of the board.
Thank you, Trustee Chua. So seeing no further hands, we're ready to take this to a recorded vote. Okay. Yes. Yep, you got the floor.
My apologies. I just wanted to mention that I had indicated to the chair during the policy meeting that I would get back to the board regarding section 55 sub 5, which had been identified in the policy. There was a typo. Yes. So that should be 55 sub 5, not 55 sub 2. If you recall, at the time, I didn't have a copy of the act in front of me, so I did double check. Sorry to interject.
Fine, thank you for catching that. I appreciate that. Okay, so we're going to go ahead and take this to a recorded vote. So we are taking a vote on the main motion as it has all been amended and spoken to. So Trustee Carabella?
I'm abstaining. Thank you.
Okay, Trustee Powell? In favor. Trustee Kennedy?
In favor.
Trustee O'Hearns-Renota?
In favor?
Trustee Duarte?
In favor.
Trustee Murphy?
Favor.
Okay. Trustee Saunders?
In favor.
Trustee Kelly?
In favor.
Okay, Trustee Kuzma?
In favor.
Trustee Bowie?
In favor.
And Trustee Chua?
In favor.
And I'm in favor as well. So the motion passes. Thank you very much. I will now give the
Thank you, Vice Chair. We had two very long motions for discussion tonight, and thanks everybody for the fantastic discussion. We shall move rather quick now. Moving down the agenda, we move on down directly to the next order of business, which is staff reports. Item 10, there are no staff reports tonight. Next order of business is information item. First item here, 11.1, student trustees update. Student trustees, please present your report.
Sorry, if we could just scroll down to the, yeah, no worries. Thank you so much. So for tonight, I will be presenting the achieving section of our report. So one thing that the Student Senate has been working on is through our Environmental Stewardship Committee. They've begun their Christmas Thrift Store initiative being hosted at Corpus, St. Ignatius of Loyola, and St. Francis Xavier, representing the three regions that we represent as student trustees. We're excited to see the success of this initiative to reduce waste and consumption around the holidays. As you can tell in our report last week, we outlined the dates. So the Corpus one happened at the end of last week. Loyola was the past couple of days, and then now the thrift store is moving to St. FX for the rest of the week. Furthermore, we are in the process of organizing a full day achievement retreat for student senators and student leaders on the turnaround day on February 3rd, so the day after the first semester ends. The focus of this date will be on student mental health and creating safe and inclusive school climates as student leaders. As well, we had a very exciting December general meeting last week where we had many amazing guest speakers. We received two presentations, one from STEAM consultant Mr. Kovacs and from Director Klein. Mr. Kovacs addressed senators regarding the implementation of new STEAM programs, esports, and STEAM entrepreneurship grants. The senators have expressed interest in both participating and promoting these programs, so we're looking forward to next steps with that. As well, Director Klein presented an overview of his role, took many questions from the Student Senate regarding topics such as board operations, curriculum, the multi-year strategic plan, and third-party agreements. We sincerely thank both of them for taking time out of their very busy schedules to come and present and to answer student questions.
So I will be saying the believing section. So the Catholic Faith and Actions Subcommittee on the Student Senate has completed and sent out their 7 Advent videos to each school. Each video focuses on a different party in the nativity scene, including the animals, the shepherds, the 3 wise men, the Star of Bethlehem, St. Joseph, St. Mary, and finally Jesus Christ. For schools with video announcements, the videos will be played alongside the announcements. And for schools unable to share them via video, social media posts have been produced and shared to get them out to all the students. In addition to this, the Halton Catholic District School Board Senate Instagram page is posting these videos, and different senators and student trustees have been reposting them so we can get the message out to everybody. Yeah, if you want to follow our Instagram, it's HCDSB Senate.
Highly encouraged on Twitter and Instagram at HCDSB Senate. And I will be covering the belonging section for tonight. So our students across the HCDSB are satisfied with the recent amendment to policy I-26. Student trustees on the Halton Catholic District School Board. As it previously stood, non-Catholic students were unable to put their name forward to run to become a student trustee just because of their religious identity. The amendment of this policy reduces the gap between our Catholic and non-Catholic students within our board and is fostering a further sense of belonging for all of our students. This will be implemented for our 2023 to 2024 student trustee elections this February, with many students from our HCDSB secondary schools expressing their interest in running to become a student trustee for the 2023-2024 school year, making this upcoming election possibly one of the most competitive elections we've ever had. As we approach the quickly upcoming elections, the student trustees and student senate are excited to see all the candidates and who will be elected for the 2023 to 2024 term. Furthermore, at the December 15th, 2022 General Student Senate meeting, the Student Senate expressed their concerns regarding student councils. Our senators have expressed concerns regarding different election processes at various schools and a lack of consistency among governance structures on a school-to-school basis. Some of the concerns are brainstormed and displayed below for your interest.
Thank you, student trustees, for your reports. Trustees, do we have questions for our students? Seeing none, I want to thank you for presenting your report, and as usual, it's very informative. Thank you. Our next item under information items is schools update. Director Klein.
Thank you. Through you, Mr. Chair. The trustees have the report in front of them, and I'll just highlight some of the items that are within that. We are at the end of the calendar year. We are in the start of winter and in December. However, we are beginning to think about next year. So I'd like to highlight the fact that we do have kindergarten registrations that are beginning online now and moving out through the next few weeks. We have as well the secondary school registration occurring at this time too. So this is the time of year when we have our grade 8s beginning to look at their option sheets for next year. We have advanced placement and IB applications too that have deadlines that are coming up very, very shortly as well. Within the FSL programs that we have at our board, which is a wide breadth of them, we have, you will have noticed that there have been deadlines for extended French, bless you, and for French immersion program as well through the board. And you can see that it's evolved over the years so that the process for attaining that is a little different than it was before. Trustees have been made aware of the tutoring programs that are that have been ongoing and have been continued through this year. They're robust and they're effective. And the numbers speak for themselves in terms of the numbers of students that have been supported through them. This is ministry funding that we gratefully received and were extended beyond, I think, the original timelines. We can see that we've had nearly 1,200 students at our board supported through the fall tutoring program that lasted from September to December, and an average of 10 hours of tutoring, and that had virtual aspects to it and in-person aspects to it as well. And the group size of average was about 7, which is very good in terms of an instructor and a pupil ratio. 43 secondary schools participated in, or students participated in, and 418 of the participants were students with special education needs. We do have winter tutoring sessions that will be beginning in January of this upcoming year and will be extended into the spring. Again, coming out of COVID and looking back at what we couldn't do over those 2 years, it's good to see that we have some things that are back to what we would consider normal school practices. and not least of which are the athletic activities. So trustees are, of course, aware that within secondary, we have the return of basketball, volleyball, hockey, curling, swimming, skiing, and snowboarding, just to name a few. Within elementary, the highlight is basketball. We're in basketball season now. Even e-sports, and e-sports for us would entail a tournament in the middle of January. That should be exciting and should be, I would think, well participated in. The other highlight that we had here was a STEAM pilot program that you're aware of, that's at St. Ignatius. And also later we talked a bit about David Wells. David Wells has been a more or less a very well-received fixture certainly in Ontario and Catholic schools, whether it's been working with parents, working with staffs, working with all of our stakeholders in Catholic education, by his very inviting and very real world and real world rooted stories of how we live out our lives in faith. International Day of People with Disabilities. We saw many tweets about that at our board. That began in November the 28th and went through December the 2nd. And of course, it highlights the culture here at Halton Catholic of full inclusion and celebration. And Project Search It, which is in here, was also something I highlighted for you in my weekly report. Again, gives a sense of the possibilities for students with developmental disabilities as they head into their final year of high school and leaving into what's often known as the real world. That ends my report, Mr. Chair. I'll take any questions.
Thank you, Director Klein. Trustees, do we have questions for Director Klein? Vice Chair Agnew, your hand is up. You have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. The question that I have is with respect to high school cafeterias. Are they all up and running and operational? Do we know?
Director Klein.
I'm not entirely sure, and I'll defer that. Where are we? Superintendent Lotz snuck up behind me.
Thank you. And through you, Mr. Chair, and to you, Trustee Agnew or Vice Chair Agnew, they are not all up and running. We definitely know that Notre Dame has had issues getting help. We have contacted the community, letting them know if there's anybody interested in the cafeterias to contact directly our provider. I believe that St. FX has had some issues with it, as well as Corpus has had some concern with theirs as well. So staffing is the big issue with it, and it's not staffing on our side, it's staffing on our provider side that they can't get staffing. Our other cafeterias, as far as I know at this point in time, are up and running.
Thank you, Vice Chair Agnew. You have a follow-up?
I do. So in light of that, are there options for us? Other providers? Are we held to contractual obligations, or other things being done in the schools to provide opportunities for hot lunches or food for students that are there?
Superintendent Lotz.
Thank you, through you, Mr. Chair, and to you, Vice Chair Agnew. As far as other options, there are, if there was a willing participant to I guess, follow up or accept the responsibilities of opening a cafeteria. We are not aware of any at this point in time, anyone willing to do that. I know there's been some creative solutions at some of our schools. St. FX, for example, we're working through a creative solution right now. I believe with Notre Dame, that I believe they've had lunches or something provided on a weekly basis. And I'm going off of just as a parent in that facility or at that facility. And with Corpus is a little different. It's been up, it's been down, it's been up, it's been down. There was some concerns initially with some staffing issues as well as some other issues, not necessarily always related to staffing, but there definitely was another concern at that cafeteria or in that kitchen, I should say. So.
Thank you. Superintendent Lofts. Up next is Trustee Saunders. You have the floor.
Through you, Mr. Chair. Just sort of Superintendent Lofts, I know that the Knights of Columbus do breakfasts or something at I think some schools. Is that an option to look at?
Superintendent Lofts.
Thank you through you, Mr. Chair. And to you, Trustee Saunders, I'm not aware of that.
Okay.
So,
All right. So my real question, sorry, that was just, is to our Director Klein. As you know, I've been getting emails on masking, and I'm just wondering if we'll be coming out with any policy on masking, or I provided them that information that you gave me, and the one fellow seems very unhappy with that, and he was asking if we were going to have our own policy on masking.
Thank you. Trustee Saunders will address it to the chair. But so here, just so that get a good idea, that question would qualify under open question period because Sunday, but you could rephrase it into your question and pass it on to director. So for future, okay. So Director Klein.
Through you, Mr. Chair. Thank you for that great question, Trustee Saunders. You're aware that we, as we always do, worked with public health here in Halton just over a month ago to forward to parents a letter that came from Dr. Magani. And within that, again, these are not areas of advice that would come as a surprise to any of us, having been through the last 2.5 years. But again, promoting the whole idea of screening and practicing good hygiene, frequent cleaning of things that I think we all got very good at, physical distancing, ensuring that when it came to vaccinations, availing ourselves of heading to those places to get our shots. Because at that point, again, the letter was from early to mid-November. There was a spike I think we had all heard about and read about in some of the respiratory viruses, not least of which was RSV. So with that, the request was also to recommend that people mask when they could in indoor settings, including social and public gatherings. There was no mandate from the ministry with regard to that, no push one way or the other on that. So, and we do look at other boards and what they're up to as well. And so we promote this as well. We continue to promote this, but we're not at this point looking at revisiting the whole practice of mandating masks. We would promote what we have here from our friends at Public Health to ensure that people are staying as healthy as possible.
Thank you. Trustee Saunders, you have any other follow-up question? Okay. I see no other hands up. I have just a quick question for Director Klein. So we talked about the JK enrollment at the beginning of your presentation, and we know our numbers are down. What are we doing differently to promote enrollment in JK across our system?
Through you, Mr. Chair, I'm just wondering if we could, not sure if that's Superintendent Crowell or Ms. Swindon. Nancy, sorry, Superintendent Donalfo. I'm very sorry.
Superintendent Donalfo.
Thank you, and through you, Mr. Chair. So what we've done in Halton Catholic is our enrollment is all online now, and it started a lot earlier. So enrollment opened up the first week of December with an attempt to make sure that we're reaching all of our parents. The process is it's an easy process for parents. It's been well advertised, and it has an advertising campaign through communications. All the local parishes have been communicated to. Communications team has a robust, whatever their reach out is, be it through social media, and we're continuing to keep it open. So we did see immediately a good uptake of 500 students. We're about there right now, and we will continue to do that traditional 2 days in January as we've always had, really to ensure that we're capturing as many parents who may not or have had difficulty with the electronic to have that opportunity to come into the school. But the whole process will be electronic that we're doing, and we're going to continue to advertise for it.
Thank you, Superintendent Donalfo, and thank you, Director Klein and your staff for your presentation and the work that you do. We shall now move on down to the next item, 11.3, 4-year ministry enrollment projection. Superintendent Lofts.
Thank you. Through you, Mr. Chair. Please find the four-year ministry enrollment projection report for review. These projections were forwarded to the ministry by the November 25th, 2022 deadline. Just to let trustees know, in table 1, there was an additional update as a result of when we were doing the revised estimates, which lowered the secondary enrollment by 64 ADE. So the true value now is, was moved from 13,235 to 13,171. The ministry will be informed of this change, or has been informed of this change. Bronco Vidovic, our Senior Manager of Planning Services, Dylan Ganasakara, our Planning Manager, or I am available to address any questions.
Thank you, Superintendent Loft. Trustees, do we have any questions for staff? Seeing none, Superintendent Loft and your team, thank you for this enrollment projections. We shall now move on down to item 11.4, construction report. Superintendent Merrick.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and through you, you can see from the photos in your package tonight that we're well underway at the Milton number 9 site. We have foundations going in into the block wall starting on top of those. We also have site services going on the site. So in the ground, you can see the snow in the pictures as well. Not great conditions there, but we'll battle through the snow and the cold this winter and keep plugging away at that build there. We are also mobilizing on the Milton number 3 site as well. We have equipment arriving on site. We have site layouts happening, and we have fencing and signage going up shortly as well. Weren't able to get pictures in time for that. Most of the work happened late last week, but we will add pictures to our website, hopefully by the end of the week here. And then we also have foundation starting in the Milton 3 site for January. So happy to take any questions that trustees may have on the 2 active construction sites that we have going right now.
Thank you, Superintendent Merrick. Trustees, do we have any questions for Superintendent Merrick? Seeing none, thank you, Superintendent Merrick, for your update. We shall now move on down directly to next order of business, which is open question period. Do we have any open questions submitted? Do we have questions submitted tonight? No? Okay, fair enough. Sorry. So we do not have any open question period. We don't have any questions submitted tonight. And so we move on to the next order of business, which is in camera. We do not have to go in camera, and resolution regarding absentees. We have everyone present here tonight, so we do not need a motion. And finally, adjournment and closing prayer. Before we adjourn, just since this is the last meeting of the year, on behalf of all our trustees, I would like to wish each and every student, parent, guardian, teacher, staff, and administrator a very Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year, and have a restful time with your families and friends, and we will see you all in the new year. With that, I'd now like to have a motion to adjourn. May I have a mover? Trustee O'Hearn Chanada moves, and seconded by Trustee Carabella. All in favor? Anybody opposed? Seeing none, the motion carries. Vice Chair Agnew, could you please lead us in the opening prayer?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And if you'll join me in the sign of our faith, in the name of the Father and the Son and the Holy Spirit. When the song of the angels is stilled, when the star in the sky is gone, when the kings and princes are home, when the shepherds are back with the flocks, then the work of Christmas begins. To find the lost, to heal those broken in spirit, to feed the hungry, to release the oppressed, to rebuild the nations, to bring peace among all peoples, to make a little music with the heart, and to radiate the light of Christ every day in every way in all that we do and in all that we say. Then the work of Christmas begins. Amen. Father, Son, and the Holy Spirit.
Thank you, everybody. It was a good meeting. Good night.